I'm going to be presiding judge. We are live streaming, and I will give a few cautions here. Are both teams prepared to go forward? Okay. I'm going to inform the teams, as well as anyone that's watching, that the Colorado Bar Association may be taking photographs of the competition during this round, and that team participation in the state tournament grants automatic permission for the use of these photos by the Colorado Bar Association. There are no recesses allowed, with the very limited exception of a true health emergency. So we are going to move this along as quickly as possible, hopefully around 2 hours. And I'll be ruling on motions, objections, and the jury will be scoring. Please keep in mind that the compliance with time requirements will be considered in scoring individual performances. Could each side introduce the team members and attorneys and witnesses, please?
Yes, Your Honor. Good afternoon, Your Honor, opposing counsel and members of the jury. My name is Elizabeth Kugler, and today I will be conducting the direct examination of Dakota Weirs, the cross-examination of Skylar Weirs, and I will also be delivering closing arguments on behalf of the plaintiff. At this time, may my co-counsel and our witnesses introduce themselves?
Please.
Good afternoon, Your Honor, opposing counsel, members of the jury. My name is Alex Kugler, and today I will be conducting the direct examination of Carson Durst, the cross-examination of Blake Doncourt, as well as providing the opening statement for the plaintiff.
Good morning, Your Honor, opposing counsel, members of the jury. My name is Kayla Anderson, and today I'll be doing the direct examination of Dr. Casey Rogers and the direct cross of Dr. Devin Williams.
Good morning. My name is Marina Eisenstadt, and today I am Dakota Weirs.
Good morning. My name is Zoe Kugler, and today I am Carson Durst.
Good afternoon. My name is Emma Steffel, and today I am Casey Rogers.
Welcome.
Good morning, Your Honor, members of the jury and opposing counsel. I am Maggie Holland, and today I will be providing the direct examination of Ms. Blake Doncourt, the cross-examination of Carson Durst, as well as providing the closing argument for the defense.
Good morning, Your Honor. My name is Matthias Bauer, and today I'll be providing the direct examination of Skylar Weirs and the cross-examination of Dakota Weirs.
Good morning, Your Honor, opposing counsel and members of the jury. My name is Tony Adams, and today I will be performing the opening statement, the cross-examination of Dr. Rogers, and the direct examination of Dr. Williams. At this time, we request that our witnesses be allowed to introduce themselves.
Go ahead.
Good morning, Your Honor. My name is Alex Holland, and today I am Blake Doncourt.
Good morning, Your Honor, members of the jury. My name is Sophie Lehman, and I am Skylar Weirs.
Good morning, Your Honor, members of the jury. My name is Hannah Moskowitz, and I am Dr. Devin Williams.
Good morning. Okay, thank you. I'm going to go ahead and ask the team members, please raise your right hands. Please turn on your audio so you can verbally respond. But team members, do you promise that the presentation you are about to give will faithfully and truthfully conform to the facts and rules of the mock trial competition?
Yes,
Your Honor.
Okay, and I believe all the witnesses were sworn there. Scoring panelists, please turn on your video and raise your right hand. That's two. Do we have a third scorer? There we go. Please raise your right hands. Do you promise to adjudicate the mock trial competition as fairly and as objectively as possible in accordance with the facts, procedures, and rules of the mock trial competition?
I do.
Okay. Are there any preliminary matters we need to discuss?
Yes, Your Honor. The plaintiff does have a few brief preliminary matters before we begin.
Go ahead.
Firstly, we would like to request that due to the virtual setting, lawyers may remain seated for direct, cross, and objections.
That's permitted.
And we would also ask that timekeepers use their discretion in stopping time in the event of technical difficulties.
That's fine.
And we would also like to establish the means for presenting evidence. Given the virtual nature of the proceedings, we would request that during the admission of evidence, the witnesses be constructively shown the case materials they have been provided in order to identify them for admission. And then once identified and admitted, and with the court's permission, co-counsel will then publish the exhibit to the jury.
That's fine.
And we would also request that any time remaining for closing statements may be used for a rebuttal close.
That's fine.
Thank you, Your Honor. The plaintiff has no further preliminary matters.
Your Honor, we simply have one preliminary matter, which is that we ask that all witnesses be constructively sequestered.
As much as we can.
Your Honor, the plaintiff does have an objection to that preliminary matter.
Go ahead.
We do not feel that the sequestering of witnesses is necessary in this case. There aren't major secrets that are going to need to be hidden either from other witnesses or from the jury. And in this case, the testimony of other witnesses is going to be crucial to the testimony of witnesses. And as such, we feel that they need to hear that testimony in order to provide full evidence and knowledge in this case today.
Yeah, with the format here with using Zoom, I don't know that we really can sequester witnesses. So I'll leave it to the attorneys to handle matters of credibility on cross-examination. So we'll do what we can and move forward. And I guess that was the only preliminary matter from the defense?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. All right, well, I'm ready to start the trial if you guys are.
The plaintiff is ready to proceed, Your Honor.
Okay.
Yes, Your Honor.
Let's go ahead and start with opening statements.
Yes, Your Honor. Before I begin, can everybody see and hear me all right? All right. May it please the court, counsel, members of the jury. We are here today because of Lush Fertilizer's decisions to cut corners, cut costs, and ultimately cut the future of Dakota Weirs short. Dakota Weirs was an active member of her community. Between volunteering her time at a local homeless shelter and participating in National Honor Society and student government, she had many interests. Her passion, however, was the piano. When she played, she felt closer to her grandfather, who introduced her to the piano, sat beside her as she practiced, and now, sadly, is gone. Her hard work and passion led her closer to her dreams of attending Juilliard and becoming a concert pianist. Now, those dreams have been taken from her. Like many teens, Miss Weir spent her summers working at her job. At Haven Landscaping, she was in charge of spreading seed and fertilizing. Little did she know that the revolutionary new product she was using was going to lead to her being diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, cancer, at the age of 20. This new product, manufactured by Lush Fertilizer, was supposed to provide greener lawns with fewer applications and even be better for the environment. But Lush had a dark secret. It contained a new chemical compound known as Drufo. Today, you will see and hear clear evidence that the chemical compound Drufo caused Miss Weirs' non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. You'll hear testimony from Carson Durst, a former Lush employee who was inside the company when this product was being developed, an employee who repeatedly tried to raise the alarm with both Lush Fertilizer and Blake Doncourt, the company's CEO. You'll hear expert testimony from Dr. Casey Rogers, who will carefully explain to you how her study verifies what Lush and Carson Durst had already discovered inside the company, that their new fertilizer compound Drufo causes cancer. Most importantly, you will hear from Dakota Weirs herself, who was given no clear warning, no hint that the fertilizer she was using was going to cut her future short. And finally, you will hear from Lush's own CEO, Blake Doncourt, you will hear from Lush's own CEO, Blake Doncourt, who will admit to you that they knew the fertilizer carried with it a risk. Moreover, they will admit that there is a way to make this fertilizer 100% safe for humans, just by placing it in an oven and baking. But it was going to cost money, and Blake Doncourt and Lush Fertilizer felt that it was going to cost too much money. And so they cut corners, they cut costs, and in the end, those decisions are going to tragically cut the future of Dakota Weirs short. Now, the defense will try and spin these stories, telling you that the fertilizer Miss Weirs used was mostly safe, or safe enough. They will try and tell you that the studies showing the dangers of Drufo were outliers, or that they were poorly done. They will try and point the finger of blame at Dakota, at the environment, at anywhere else. But in the end, after you have seen and heard the testimony here today, you will reach the obvious conclusion. Lush Fertilizer is responsible for creating a toxic chemical, and that toxic chemical is responsible for Dakota Weirs' illness. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, my name is Alex Kugler, and today, along with my co-counsel, Elizabeth Kugler and Kayla Anderson, we will present to you the evidence that shows Drufo causes cancer. Yet in order to cut costs, the company cut corners, didn't heed the warning signs, didn't bake their product, and failed in their duty to make it safe. As a result, the future of Miss Weirs has been destroyed. Nothing can change those facts, but your verdict can bring justice to the parties that deserve it. Thank you.
Thank you. Defense counsel?
Yes, Your Honor. May I begin?
Please proceed.
May it please the court. Your Honor, opposing counsel, members of the jury. Handle with care. 3 little words that could have made a world of a difference in today's trial. As you have heard from the plaintiff's opening statement, Ms. Weirs was a teenager who worked as a landscaper, where they frequently used many fertilizers and pesticides, one of which was Lush Fertilizer. Of course, since then, Dakota Weirs has been diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. Our heart truly goes out to Ms. Weirs, and we wish her nothing but health, safety, and a speedy recovery. In today's trial, we will show that the negligence for this tragedy does not fall on the company Lush Fertilizer. The defense's argument in today's trial is twofold. We will show, 1, that the company Lush Fertilizer, that the chemical Drufo created by the company Lush Fertilizer is not carcinogenic, and therefore it is more probable than not that it did not cause Ms. Weirs' non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. And 2, we will show that even if the chemical were dangerous, all negligence would still fall on the plaintiff, Dakota Weirs, because the products she used were not handled with care. 3 little words that could have made a world of a difference in today's trial. Had these products been handled with care, Ms. Weirs would have worn the recommended safety equipment as instructed by Lush Fertilizer. Had these products been handled with care, Ms. Weirs would have protected herself not only from the chemicals in Lush Fertilizer, but from the multitude of chemicals, from the several fertilizers and pesticides she used on a regular basis as a landscaper. Had these products been handled with care, we may not even be here today. The defense will call several witnesses in today's trial. You'll hear from the CEO of Lush Fertilizer, Ms. Doncourt. As the CEO, Ms. Doncourt knows her company inside and out, which is why she will be able to testify to the thorough, accurate, and rigorous safety test done for the chemical Drufo to show that the chemical was handled with care by the company Lush Fertilizer. Furthermore, she will show the good intentions of the company and protecting each and every one of their customers. And it is these good intentions that leads Ms. Doncourt to hire only the best scientists for her research team, such as the toxicologist, Dr. Williams, who you will also meet in today's trial. Dr. Williams will use her PhD in toxicology and pharmacology, along with her years of experience dedicated specifically to the chemical Drufo, to show that it is more probable than not that the chemical cannot cause non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. She will also use her experience to disprove the many failures of the study conducted by Dr. Casey Rogers, the plaintiff's expert witness. You'll hear from several expert witnesses in today's trial. And as this information is being thrown at you, we urge you to consider the varying levels of relevance in each expert. Consider the plaintiff's expert, Dr. Rogers, a professor in entomology and agriculture, who has written exactly one study that attempts to find a correlation between the use of Drufo and development of cancer. One flawed study that has not been peer-reviewed, has not been replicated, and fails to account for several important variables in the development of non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. Compare that to the defense's expert, Dr. Williams, who has spent an entire career dedicated specifically to the chemical Drufo, who has read countless articles about the chemical and read countless studies and is able to sum up this information into one expert testimony, whose testimony weighs more. The defense will call yet another expert, Skylar Weirs, to the stand today, the twin sister of Dakota Weirs. And while we understand that it can be complicated having two siblings on opposite sides of today's trial, we urge you to look past this relationship and into the information provided by Ms. Weirs. For example, she will show that the chemical in fact protects the user by limiting the amount of times it must be sprayed per year. At this time, I would like to remind the jury of the burden of proof in today's trial. The burden of proof rests upon the plaintiff of a preponderance of evidence. This means they must show that it is more probable than not that the chemical Drufo is carcinogenic and caused Ms. Weirs' non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, and furthermore, that the company Lush Fertilizer is negligent for distributing this product. The defense is confident that the plaintiff will not handle this burden with care, which is why we ask you to return a verdict in favor of the defense. Thank you.
Thank you. Is the plaintiff ready to present its case in chief?
Yes, Your Honor. The plaintiff would like to call Ms. Dakota Weirs to the stand.
Please proceed.
Ms. Weirs, can I confirm that you can see and hear me all right?
Yes, can I do the same?
Yes. All right, I believe we are ready to proceed. Can you please begin by telling us your name and spelling it for the court?
My name is Dakota Weirs, Dakota Weirs.
And why are you here today?
I'm here because Lush Fertilizer produces a chemical called Drufo, and I believe that chemical caused my non-Hodgkin's lymphoma.
Objection, Your Honor, speculation.
Any response?
Your Honor, Ms. Weirs is not testifying as an expert. This is based on her rationally based perception as someone with lymphoma who worked with Lush Fertilizer.
If we need to have a curative instruction at the end, we can give one, but I'm going to go ahead and overrule the objection.
Yes, Your Honor. Ms. Weirs, why are you here today?
Like I said, I'm here because I believe that this chemical Drufo caused my non-Hodgkin's lymphoma.
I want to begin by talking about your background. Could you tell us a bit about some important parts of your life prior to your illness?
I was just like any other teenage kid. I loved succeeding academically as a member of the National Honor Society. I volunteered at a local homeless shelter and worked at a local landscaping company on the side. And I also played the piano.
Objection, Your Honor, relevance.
Response?
Your Honor, in this case, the plaintiff cannot prove economic damages for Ms. Weirs. Rather, we are tasked with proving emotional and mental damages in this case. And I would argue that this goes to the damage that Ms. Weirs has sustained in this case.
I'm going to permit the questioning. Motion is going to be overruled. Objection overruled.
Ms. Weirs, what were you saying about these parts of your life?
Well, along with everything I listed, I love to play the piano ever since I was a young child, and I was working towards my dream of attending Juilliard as a pianist.
And what inspired you to work towards that goal?
I have loved to play the piano ever since my grandparents' gorgeous baby grand piano caught my attention. I would sit with my grandfather for hours as he taught me melodies that tightened my connection with him until his death when I was only 7.
And how did his death affect you?
After his death, I began to keep his memory alive by starting on my path towards professional piano. But now that dream is ruined.
Why is that?
I was recently diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma.
I want to talk now about that diagnosis. How has non-Hodgkin's lymphoma impacted your life?
I've suffered most from my inability to play the piano. It has absolutely devastated me that I no longer have the strength to sit and play even the shortest concerto due to pain from fatigue, chest pain, enlarged lymph nodes, and bruises from sitting on the piano bench. My dreams of a Juilliard scholarship are gone. But the worst part is that I feel like I've lost my grandfather a second time. I'll never get that back.
And how did this impact your emotional state?
Unfortunately, I became depressed after my diagnosis. I feel uncertain, and I don't know if I will recover.
I'm sorry, Ms. Weirs. I know that must be hard for you. Let's move on to your time working with a landscaping business and your experience with this chemical you mentioned called Drufo. How did you come to work for the landscaping company that you mentioned earlier?
I started working for Haven Landscaping as a landscaping technician when I was 14 years old. I liked to work with my hands and enjoyed being outdoors, so it seemed like the perfect way to fund my schooling.
And what kinds of protective measures did you take against any chemicals that could have been in the fertilizer that you used while you worked there?
Well, my old boss always told me to cover my face when working with chemicals, but sometimes it was too hot and I couldn't breathe. We were also technically supposed to wear long sleeves, pants, and gloves, but it was summer, and pretty much everyone who worked there just wore shorts and t-shirts. If I'd known the fertilizer we were using could cause cancer, I would have done things differently.
And how did you discover that your cancer could have a connection to your exposure to that fertilizer?
I was watching the news one day and I heard about the possibility that a chemical called Drufo, which was in a fertilizer I used all the time, could cause non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. I knew I'd use Lush fertilizer, so I contacted my old boss who confirmed—
Objection, Your Honor. This past statement was hearsay.
Response?
Your Honor, this is not being offered for the truth of the matter asserted. Rather, it is being offered for the effect on the listener. In this case, that Ms. Weirs was prompted by this to look further into Drufo as a possibility for causing her non-Hodgkin's lymphoma.
Yep. Objection is going to be overruled. Proceed.
Well, like I said, I then contacted my old boss who confirmed I had used Lush fertilizer and got me a copy of the label on the packaging.
And what labels, if any, were present on the fertilizer regarding safety concerns?
My old boss said there were no warning labels about the dangers of continually using Lush fertilizer. I thought this was strange because many of the other products we used often had some sort of warning label on the packaging.
At this time, I'd like to constructively share with you what has been previously marked as Exhibit 1. My co-counsel should be doing that shortly. Do you recognize this, Ms. Weirs?
Yes.
And what is it?
This is the label on the brand of Lush fertilizer I was exposed to.
And is it a fair and accurate representation of that label?
Yes.
Your Honor, at this time I move to admit Exhibit 1 into evidence.
Any objection?
No, Your Honor.
Granted.
Permission to publish to the jury, Your Honor?
Granted.
Now, Ms. Weirs, what did this label mention regarding non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, if anything?
It doesn't mention non-Hodgkin's lymphoma or any similar diseases. It has the ingredients, but no specific warnings.
And what else did you discover about the fertilizer you used, if anything?
Actually, I was able to find a French version of the exact label that was on Lush fertilizer. My dad helped me translate it and discovered it was different than the US version.
At this time, I'd like to constructively direct your attention to what has been previously marked as Exhibit 2. Do you recognize this?
Yes.
And what is it?
This is the French version of the label on Lush fertilizer.
And is it a fair and accurate representation of that label?
Yes.
Your Honor, at this time, I move to admit Exhibit 2 into evidence.
Any objection?
Yes, Your Honor. This exhibit is hearsay. Even if it is found not to be hearsay, it is still in question whether if it is the best evidence.
A response?
Your Honor, could opposing counsel please confirm? I believe I heard 2 objections, the hearsay objection, and then the objection under Rule 1001 of best evidence.
Correct.
As to the hearsay, Your Honor, this is a statement by a party opponent. In this case, it is a statement by Lush Fertilizer. And as to the best evidence rule, under Rule 1003, a duplicate is admissible to the same extent as an original if there is not a question as to the document's authenticity. And in this case, there is no question as to this exhibit's authenticity.
I'm going to permit it. Overruled.
Permission to publish to the jury, Your Honor.
Granted.
Now, Ms. Weirs, what did you notice about this list of ingredients?
It doesn't contain Drufo. It has exactly the same ingredients listed on the English version, just without Drufo.
And why is that significant?
It shows that Drufo was banned in France. I just don't understand how Lush could continue to use Drufo in the US when it had been banned in other countries for years.
What has led you to believe that your cancer was directly caused by using fertilizer containing Drufo?
Objection, Your Honor. Speculation.
Response?
Your Honor, this is based on the witness's rationally based perception, not requiring any expertise. There's a logical conclusion to be made here, and you don't need to be an expert to draw that conclusion.
Defense counsel, you'll be able to address this on cross. I'm going to overrule the objection.
Ms. Weirs, what has led you to believe that your cancer was directly caused by using fertilizer containing Drufo?
I happen to have a twin, Skylar Weirs, who participated in all of the same activities as me, except for my landscaping job. If I were exposed outside of my job, Skylar would have the disease as well. And like I said, I use Lush fertilizer all the time.
Let's talk a little more about Skylar. What was your relationship like with her before this case?
Well, Skylar and I have never had the stereotypically close twin relationship. Things between us started to get worse when my medical bills started piling up. Skylar accused me of draining my father's estate, even though my father had been paying many of Skylar's extensive gambling debts before I got sick.
And lastly, what outlook do you have on the future now that you've received this dire diagnosis?
Unless I suddenly get better, I am unable to play the piano I once loved, and my dreams of attending Juilliard are gone. Although the doctors have not given up hope, we have no idea if my condition can worsen or what kind of additional care I may need in the future. I have no idea if I'm going to survive or lose my life with this disease.
Thank you for your testimony, Ms. Weirs. Your Honor, no further questions at this time.
Cross-examination?
Yes, Your Honor. Ms. Weirs, I want to begin by saying that here at Lush Fertilizer, we truly sympathize with you and your family, and we wish you a healthy and speedy recovery. Now, there's some questions that we must get into, so let's get started. Now, Mrs. Weirs, you worked at Haven Landscaping, correct?
Yes.
And you started working at 14 years old.
Yes, I did.
And at 14 years old, it was a pretty young age to be managing big equipment, so you worked with fertilizers instead.
I did. That was my primary job.
So you worked with many different kinds of fertilizers, correct?
Especially Lush fertilizer.
And within many of these different fertilizers that you worked with were many different chemicals.
Including Drufo, which was a big one.
And with all these different chemicals that you worked with for many years, there is no distinct way to place your non-Hodgkin lymphoma on Lush fertilizer products, correct?
Lush fertilizer contains Drufo, and I truly believe that Drufo caused my cancer.
But you cannot 100% know with certainty that through all your fertilizers that you used, that Lush fertilizer could have caused your cancer.
I cannot confirm this, but I truly believe that it did.
Okay. Now, I would like to move on to your manager's instructions at Haven Landscaping. Now, you were instructed by your manager to always wear pants, correct?
It was a recommendation.
You were, Ms. Weirs, are you saying that you were not instructed to wear pants by your manager?
I was instructed, but it was a recommendation.
Okay, so you were instructed to wear pants. You're also instructed to wear long sleeve shirts, correct?
It was a recommendation.
Ms. Weirs, are you saying that it was recommended and not instructed?
It was instructed.
Okay. Now, Ms. Weirs, you're also instructed to wear gloves when working with fertilizers, correct?
We were instructed to wear all these things, but no one at the company did, and I was only 14 years old.
Ms. Weirs, so you were instructed to wear gloves. Now, were you finally also instructed to wear a mask when working with these chemicals?
Objection, Your Honor. Cumulative evidence.
Response?
Yes, Your Honor. As Mrs. Weir's condition is here in question, we must talk about how she could have contracted non-Hodgkin lymphoma. As use of possible protective gear is very important in this case, how she treated this instructive protective gear is very important.
Your Honor, may I respond?
I think you can cover this on redirect, so I'm going to permit it.
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. Now, Ms. Weirs, did you wear the instructed long sleeve? Did you wear the instructed pants?
No one at the company was wearing these things. It was summer, it was hot.
Ms. Weirs, so let me get this straight. Because no one was wearing the instructive protective gear, you didn't wear your protective gear either?
Nowhere on the label did it say I was going to get cancer from not wearing these.
Ms. Weirs, this is not about the label, this is about your instruction. Ms. Weirs, did you also wear the long sleeve shirts that you were instructed?
I didn't wear long sleeve shirts. I didn't wear pants. I didn't wear a hazmat suit. It was only recommended.
Ms. Weirs, this was directly instructed to you, correct?
It was.
Okay. Now, Ms. Weirs, did you wear the instructed gloves?
I did not. No one at the company was wearing these things. And as I said, I didn't know I was going to get cancer.
So you also didn't wear the gloves. Now, Ms. Weirs, did you finally wear the instructed mask?
I have already said I did not wear all these things. It did not say I was going to get cancer.
Okay, so you didn't wear any protective gear. Now, Ms. Weirs, I'd like to move on to Exhibit 1. Are you familiar with Exhibit 1?
I am.
And Your Honor, as Exhibit 1 has already been entered into evidence, may I please screen share Exhibit 1? Can you see Exhibit 1, Mrs. Weirs?
I can.
And is this a fair and accurate representation of Exhibit 1?
It is.
Now, under user safety recommendations, I will read out loud as you follow along on the first sentence. As with any spray fertilizer, utilize protective clothing that covers exposed skin. Does it state this?
It does.
Oh, Ms. Weirs, did you wear any protective clothing when working with these chemicals?
As you can see, this label does not say I was going to get cancer from not doing it. It says it's a recommendation.
But Ms. Weirs, did you wear the instructed protective clothing?
No, because it was recommended.
Okay, so you didn't wear the protective clothing. Now, I will read sentence 2 out loud. Use of a respirator or N95 mask is recommended. Does it state this?
Yes.
But Mrs. Weirs, did you ever wear an N95 mask when working with these chemicals?
As I just said, it was recommended.
Okay, so you did not wear your mask.
Objection,
Thank you, Your Honor.
attorney testifying.
Could you please repeat the objection?
Objection, attorney testimony.
I'm going to sustain that objection. Defense counsel, please limit yourself to asking questions and not making statements.
Yes, Your Honor. Well, at this time, I have no further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you. Any redirect?
Yes, Your Honor, briefly.
Go ahead.
Ms. Weirs, why didn't you wear longer clothing or gloves when working with fertilizer?
They were just recommended, and it was never enforced while I worked at the company. Nowhere on the label did it say I was going to get cancer.
And you said in prior testimony that your boss and the label recommended that you wear all of this suggested clothing. How come you didn't?
Well, it didn't say I was going to get cancer. If I knew that this was going to cause cancer, I would have done things differently.
Thank you, Ms. Weirs. Your Honor, no further questions.
Sorry. Any limited recross?
Not at this time, no, Your Honor.
Okay. I'll excuse the witness, and plaintiff's counsel, you can call your next witness.
Plaintiff calls to the stand Ms. Carson Durst.
I'll just remind the witness that you previously been sworn.
Yes, Your Honor.
Please proceed.
Good morning, Ms. Durst. Could you please state your name and spell it for the court?
Good morning. My name is Carson Durst, Carson Durst.
And what is your connection with this case today?
Well, I was a product development engineer at Lush Fertilizer. Among other things, I worked on testing Drufo.
First, I'd like to talk about how you came to work at Lush. How did you initially get a job at Lush Fertilizer?
Well, I was best friends with Charles Doncourt, the oldest son of Blake Doncourt, who is the CEO of Lush. Charles and I, we were very close. We did everything together. When I graduated from college, Charles suggested that I apply to his dad's company, Lush Fertilizer, as an intern. I applied and joined the company in 2003.
Next, I'd like to talk about your employment with Lush and the initial research you conducted on Drufo. How did your work with Drufo begin?
Well, after only 3 months with the company, I was promoted to product development engineer because of the quality of my work. And I got the opportunity to work on one of Lush's most promising products, Drufo. As part of Lush's efforts to test the safety of it, I was tasked with researching one of the compounds in it.
And what did you find in your research?
I found a study that had been done in England showing that Drufo causes cancer in rats.
This study has been previously marked as Exhibit 3. Your Honor, permission from my co-counsel to constructively share Exhibit 3 with the witness.
Granted.
Apologies, Your Honor. Seems we're having some technical difficulties, but there we go. Ms. Durst, can you see that?
Yes, I can.
And do you recognize this?
I do. This is the study I found that shows Drufo causes cancer in rats.
Is this a fair and accurate?
In the description of this document, this was hearsay because they had testified to the contents of the conclusion of this study that has not yet been entered into evidence.
Your Honor, may I respond?
Yes, go ahead.
Your Honor, this is the witness is simply laying foundation to specify which study this is. She's not offering it for the truth of the matter asserted.
I'm going to overrule the objection.
All right. What is this study, Ms. Durst?
This is a study that shows Drufo, or C3NO9P, causes cancer in rats.
And is this a fair and accurate representation of that study?
Yes, it is.
Your Honor, at this time, I move to admit Exhibit 3 into evidence.
Any objection?
Yes, Your Honor, this document itself is hearsay.
Any response?
Yes, Your Honor. This document is not being offered to prove the truth of the matter asserted that Drufo is carcinogenic in rats, but rather the effect on the listener, because in this case it prompted Ms. Durst to have concerns about the carcinogenic qualities of Drufo in humans, not in rats.
I'm going to agree that's not hearsay for this use, so I'm going to overrule the objection.
All right, permission to publish to the jury?
Granted.
Ms. Durst, what jumped out to you about this study?
Well, in this study, researchers administered this compound that's in Drufo to rats in varying amounts of their normal diet. The rats that were exposed to more of this chemical got cancer and died quicker than the rats that weren't. This made me concerned that Drufo could cause cancer in humans too.
And what part of the study made you think that?
Well, the study reads that this study further underlines the importance of conducting an epidemiologic study in which exposure to Drufo is monitored in humans.
Next, I'd like to talk about Lush Fertilizer's second study that you were a part of. What happened after you submitted this research?
Well, after I documented this study in my lab notebook and sent it to upper management, Lush announced that they would be doing another in-house study to study the potential negative effects of Drufo. Jerry Langley, who is the product manager for Drufo, sent out instructions regarding this study in an email.
This email has been previously marked as Exhibit 4. Your Honor, permission for my co-counsel to share Exhibit 4 with the witness.
Granted.
Ms. Durst, can you see that?
Yes.
Do you recognize it?
I do. This is the email that Jerry Langley sent out with instructions for our second in-house study.
And is it a fair and accurate representation of that email?
It is.
Your Honor, at this time, I move to admit Exhibit 4 into evidence.
Any objection?
Yes, Your Honor, this document is hearsay and the contents within the email.
Response?
Your Honor, under Rule 801 D2A, this is a statement by a party opponent.
I'm going to permit it and overrule the objection.
Permission to publish to the jury.
Granted.
Ms. Durst, what was the message sent out in this email?
Well, Jerry made it clear through this email that the first study we conducted showed that Drufo caused cancer, and it was going to be redone to get different results.
And how did you come to this conclusion?
Well, Jerry wrote that concerns have arisen regarding generalized findings of potential carcinogenic qualities. So we are reinitiating this study in the coming weeks with fresh product samples.
Was there anything else notable about this email?
Well, I found it concerning that lab techs and engineers were invited to meet with marketing and economic management.
Why did this stand out to you?
Well, as anyone can see, if engineering and lab techs are meeting with the people responsible for selling a product, they might be receiving pressure to doctor the study and make it even more profitable.
Objection, Your Honor. Speculation.
Response?
Your Honor, this is not speculation, as Ms. Durst is simply using her rationally based perception, and she can see that engineers who are in charge of developing the product and the marketers who are in charge of the monetary side of the product meeting could be problematic.
I'm going to sustain the objection and ask you to move on. The jury will disregard the answer.
Yes, Your Honor. Now, I'd like to talk about what happened after the study was completed. What did Lush do after this research was finished?
Well, we had a meeting discussing the study results in which Alex Monroe, an upper echelon manager, attended. During that meeting, Alex said that we should keep it in the walls until we figure out what we're doing.
What did Alex Monroe want to keep inside the walls when she made this statement?
Well, Alex was responding to a statement by one of the scientists who said that they found that not only could
Objection, Your Honor. Hearsay.
Response?
Yes, Your Honor. Under Rule 801 D2D, this is a statement by an employee of Lush while under the employment of Lush, and is therefore a statement by a party opponent.
Is it being offered for the truth of the matter asserted?
Yes, Your Honor, but I am providing an exception to that.
Any other argument in favor of or in support of the objection?
I believe that the contents of the desires of the engineers in question is hearsay.
I'm going to permit it, but we'll address a limiting instruction for the jury at the end of the trial. Go ahead.
Yes, Your Honor. What did Alex Monroe want to keep inside the walls when she made this statement?
Well, Alex Monroe was responding to a statement by one of the scientists who said that in their findings, not only could Drufo be linked to cancer, but it had been potentially linked to non-Hodgkin's lymphoma.
What happened after the meeting?
Well, Lush released a study report that said more time would be and research would be needed to determine long-term health effects of Drufo, but it didn't mention anything about cancer or non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. Through the research I saw while I worked at Lush, all of the critical data that showed Drufo caused cancer was dismissed as outlying data. After this study was completed, Lush knew or should have known that Drufo caused cancer, but they continued to sell it anyways.
I would now like to talk about the end of your career at Lush Fertilizer. What happened to your career at Lush after the study?
Well, after the study was completed, my relationship with senior management quickly declined. I was subject to a lot of negativity and criticism, all because I was trying to keep our product safe.
What did you do about this problem?
Well, I tried to talk to Ms. Doncourt about it, but the first time she yelled at me and said I was unqualified for the job. The second time she was
Objection, Your Honor. Hearsay.
Response?
Your Honor, this is not being offered for the truth of the matter asserted, but rather the state of mind of the speaker.
Any counter argument?
Your Honor, I believe that what is being said by Ms. Blake Doncourt was a statement outside of court and is therefore hearsay.
I'm going to overrule the objection, but you can address this on cross-examination.
Yes, Your Honor. What did you do about this problem?
Well, like I said, I tried to talk to Miss Doncourt about it, and the first time she yelled at me saying I was unqualified for the job. The second time she was also angry and showed increasingly erratic behavior. At that point, I started to fear for my status at Lush Fertilizer.
What happened after this conversation?
Well, I was fired by Lush Fertilizer and I got hired by Terra's Greenery.
And what happened after you started working for Terra's Greenery?
I learned that my new job apparently violated a non-compete agreement that I signed 3 years ago when I started my employment with Lush. When I applied to Terra's Greenery, I had forgotten about the non-compete agreement and I didn't mean to violate it when I applied. After a legal battle with Lush, we agreed to wait 6 months before I started my new job.
Through the research you conducted during your time at Lush Fertilizer, what did you learn about the health effects of Drufo?
During my employment at Lush...
Objection, Your Honor. This calls for expert testimony of a lay witness and is outside the scope of the knowledge of this witness.
Response?
Your Honor, this witness is not being asked to testify to an expert field, but rather just what she learned, not any specific science, but just the general knowledge she acquired regarding this product while an employee at this company.
I'm going to overrule the objection, but you can definitely inquire about this during cross-examination.
Through the research you conducted during your time at Lush Fertilizer, what did you learn about the health effects of Drufo?
Well, during my employment at Lush Fertilizer, it was clear to me that Drufo is not safe for humans. The study I conducted while I worked at Lush shows this toxic quality to Drufo, but Lush continued to sell this product to their customers.
Thank you. No further questions, Your Honor.
Cross-examination?
Yes, Your Honor. Now, Ms. Durst, to jump right into your involvement in this case, you grew up with the Doncourts, is that correct?
Yes, we were very close.
So close that you were like family?
That's what they felt like to me, yes.
And you graduated from college with the CEO Blake Doncourt's son, is that correct?
Yes, we both went to the same college.
Now, talking about how you came to work for Ms. Doncourt and Lush Fertilizer, after graduation, you couldn't initially find a job, is that correct?
Yes, I was having trouble at the time.
And then you got a high-end internship from Lush Fertilizer, is that correct?
I did. I was very happy about that.
And you come to find out that Ivy League graduates and more experienced engineers were passed up for this job, is this correct?
I mean, I'm not the one in charge of hiring at Lush Fertilizer, so I can't confirm that.
Are you saying that this was not told to you?
That is what Blake Doncourt told to me, but I'm not the one in charge of hiring, so I was not aware of this.
Now, moving on, when you were hired, this was considered this was due to a connection to the Doncourt family.
Well, Charles suggested that I apply to Lush Fertilizer, but from what I saw, he thought his dad might be able to help, but from what I saw, my application was as honest as everyone else's.
But this had impacted your relationship with your coworkers, correct? Being hired by a close family friend.
Yes, some of my coworkers thought I was being given special treatment, but that wasn't the case.
And they had questioned your qualifications?
Yes, but once again, I was doing hard quality work there.
So moving on to the research and work that you did on the chemical compound Drufo, you claim some data was left out of the 2003 research report, correct?
Yes, I believe that data showing Drufo caused cancer was dismissed as outlying data.
But it is known that you do not have access to all of the data of this report, correct?
I didn't have access to all of it, but from what I saw, that was what was happening.
But this was before any sort of promotion you may have received that would have granted you full knowledge of this study?
Well, so I got more knowledge after I was promoted from an intern to a full-time position, but I didn't have all the data. That's correct.
And this, now returning to your career at Lush Fertilizer, there were numerous complaints brought up against you, correct?
This was after my negative claims about Drufo, yes.
And it resulted in a performance improvement plan?
Yes, that was correct. I had some disagreement with senior management after my negative claims over Drufo.
So you were put on to a workplace probation, essentially?
Yes, after my negative claims over Drufo.
And complaints were continued to be brought up against you?
Yes, my relationship with the members of the company quickly declined after the study report was finished.
And you brought up your discontent to Ms. Doncourt, is that correct?
Yes, I felt that I was being regulated to bad assignments just because I was trying to keep our product safe, and so I wanted to talk about it with my CEO.
But after this conversation, you felt upset?
I mean, Blake Doncourt thought that Jerry Langley was being reasonable in her performance improvement plan. I mean, anyone hates to lose an argument, but I'm over it now.
But you felt betrayed after this?
Once again, anyone hates to lose an argument. It wasn't the desired outcome, but I'm over it now.
You were so over it that you applied to a new job while you were working at Lush Fertilizer, is that correct?
Well, after this conversation, I could clearly see that my relationship with the company was not going well, and so I needed a new job. Fertilizer was what I knew, so that's where I applied.
Yeah, you had stated that applying to a new job would certainly get Blake's goat. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, Terrace Greenery is another fertilizer company, and I acknowledge that Blake would be upset with one of his employees moving, but that wasn't the main reason I applied to Terrace Greenery.
You were aware that Terrace Greenery is Lush Fertilizer's lead competitor. Is that correct?
So when I applied, I needed another job in fertilizer, and Terrace Greenery was the only option. So yes.
Misters, just a yes or no answer. They were rival companies. Is that correct?
They were. Now,
this broke a contract that you'd signed.
Yes, after I started with Terrace Greenery, I learned that my new job violated a non-compete agreement, which I had forgotten all about.
Misters, just a yes or no answer would suffice. For expediency's sake, would you recognize this document?
Yes.
Let the record reflect that I'm presenting Ms. Carson Durst with a copy of what has been previously marked as Exhibit 5.
So noted.
Ms. Durst, do you recognize this exhibit?
Yes.
And if you scroll to the second page, how do you recognize this exhibit?
That's the non-compete agreement I signed with Lush.
And is that your signature?
Yes, it is.
At this time, Your Honor, permission to enter Exhibit 5 into evidence.
Any objection?
Yes, the plaintiff objects to hearsay.
And can you explain the objection?
Yes, Your Honor, this is an out-of-court statement being offered to prove the truth of the matter asserted and is therefore hearsay.
Any counter argument?
Yes, Your Honor, I believe that this is a statement made by the party opponent that is Lush Fertilizer, so therefore is not hearsay. It also falls under an exception. Moreover, that this is a regularly conducted business activity, as all employees of Lush Fertilizer had signed this non-compete agreement.
Your Honor, may I respond?
I'm going to overrule the objection. Let's move on.
Now, scrolling back up to the top, if you could read along with me, the very first paragraph. During employment and for a period of 2 years after the separation of employment, for any reason, the employee will not directly or indirectly engage in any competitive
Objection,
business.
attorney testifying.
Yeah, counsel, can you rephrase this as a question?
Yes, Your Honor. Or may I request permission for Ms. Durst to read the first paragraph?
Yes, go ahead.
Ms. Durst, could you please read the first paragraph under non-compete agreement number 1?
Yes, my apologies. It's been a while since I looked at this. During employment and for a period of 2 years after the separation of employment for any reason, the employee will not directly or indirectly engage in any competitive business and shall not become directly or indirectly engaged in any business that would benefit from disclosure of Lush's trade secrets.
And again, this was a contract that you had signed, correct?
Yes, I signed it, but I had forgotten about it when I applied to Terrace Greenery.
Now, Lush Fertilizer protested this employment to Terrace Greenery in court. Is that correct?
Yes, we settled the lawsuit with a period of 6 months before I started my employment at Terrace.
So this prevented you from working for your next company?
For 6 months, yes.
And then in December of 2006, just 3 years after you started working, you were fired from Lush Fertilizer. Is that correct?
Yes, I was.
At this time, Your Honor, no further questions.
Any redirect?
Yes, Your Honor. Ms. Durst, how, if ever, did you use your relationship with the Doncourts to improve your status at the company?
I never used my relationship with the Doncourts to improve my status, other than Charles giving me a place to apply. From my part, all of the promotions and success I received were due to my own hard work.
And why did you go to work for Terrace Greenery?
Well, my career at Lush Fertilizer was rapidly declining, and fertilizer was what I knew, so it made sense to work at another fertilizer company. I had completely forgotten about the non-compete agreement, and it didn't even cross my mind when I applied.
Thank you. No further questions, Your Honor.
Any limited recross?
Not at this time, Your Honor.
We'll excuse the witness, and plaintiff, you can call your next witness.
At this time, the plaintiff calls Dr. Casey Rogers to the stand.
Reminding the witness that you are under oath.
Good morning. Can you please begin by telling us your name and spelling it for the court?
Good morning. My name is Dr. Casey Rogers, spelled CASEYROGERS.
I want to start with your background information. Can you tell us about your work and what you do for a living?
Sure. I am currently employed as a professor in the Horticulture and Entomology Department at the University of California at Berkeley.
And what education do you have?
I have a PhD in Agriculture and Entomology from the University of California at Berkeley, and I have a Bachelor of Science in Agriculture and Chemistry from Colorado State.
Now, what sorts of things do you research?
I research pesticide chemistry and toxicology, metabolism and mode of interest of organic toxins, as well as insect biochemistry.
And what are you doing currently?
Currently, I have been researching the potential long-term health side effects that prolonged exposure to certain chemicals have.
And what, if anything, have you published on these topics?
I have published numerous scholarly articles on the negative and harmful effects that certain chemicals have on the body, including 2 articles that I have published about Trufo.
And what happens with that research?
My research has been used all over the place in front of administrative advisory boards and just in litigation and also for employers. I make recommendations for how best to keep their employees safe.
Your Honor, pursuant to Rule 702, I move to admit Dr. Casey Rogers, an expert in carcinogenic agricultural products and chemicals and their effects on humans, based on her knowledge, skill, experience, training, and education.
Any objection from defense counsel?
Yes, Your Honor. The defense requests a brief voir dire.
Okay, go ahead.
Good morning, Dr. Rogers. It is true that you aren't a medical doctor, correct?
Yes, that is true. I am not a medical doctor. However, in my study, in my case, I have reviewed numerous, like hundreds of medical records. I have a deep understanding about cancer, carcinogens, chemicals, metabolism, mode of interest of organic toxins is one of my research interests.
I think you've answered my question. So moving on, you have not gone to medical school, correct?
No, I have not.
And you have not received any sort of medical training?
I have not received any medical training. However, I do have lots of knowledge in the area, numerous hours of experience too.
But once again, no formal degrees in medicine?
I do not have any formal degrees or training in medicine, no.
And something's effect on the body would be related to medicine, correct?
Yes, it is. But like I said, I have lots of knowledge and numerous.
You've answered my question. I'm not asking about your personal
Counsel,
knowledge.
Counsel, we're gonna let the witness finish her answer, and then you can ask your next question.
Yes, Your Honor. Would you like me to repeat the question?
Yes, please.
So you have not received any formal degrees in medicine, correct?
No, I have not received any formal degrees in medicine.
And whether or not something is carcinogenic would be related to the field of medicine.
Yes, it would be. However, I have lots of experience, lots of knowledge in the area. I have spent numerous hours. I'm a tenured professor at the University of California at Berkeley, and I have put lots and lots of work into my research and my studies.
Your Honor, the defense objects to the expert being admitted in the field of Drufo's effect on the human body as they don't have enough actual training or experience in the field of medicine.
I'm going to overrule the objection, but we can address a cautionary instruction to the jury at the end of the trial and go ahead with your direct plaintiff's counsel.
Thank you. Just to clarify, Your Honor, what will these be limiting my questions to?
Not now. I'm saying that if we need to have an instruction to the jury about how to interpret expert testimony, we can address that later on. But yeah, go ahead with your direct examination.
Thank you so much. I want to move on to your studies on Drufo. What is Drufo?
Sure. Drufo is a patented ingredient that Lush uses in all of its fertilizers as a bonding agent. And Lush uses this to keep the fertilizer on plants, keep the plants more fresh.
And why was Drufo of particular interest to you?
Well, Drufo first caught my attention when it very first came on the market. And it caught my attention because I believe that it had been rushed to the market without sufficient studies on its safety.
So what did you do in response?
Well, in response, I conducted my own study to try to see if there were, in fact, any negative and harmful health side effects, like I've been hearing rumors that there might be.
And what did you find?
Well, in my study, I found that I was, in fact, correct with my skepticism, and Drufo is carcinogenic and has numerous health side effects when exposed to the human body for a prolonged period of time.
Can you elaborate on the risks you determined existed with Drufo?
Sure. Those in my study who were exposed to Drufo for a prolonged period of time were 10 times more likely to be diagnosed with cancer than those without any exposure. And they were 5 times more likely to be diagnosed with cancer than those with only partial exposure.
I'd like to discuss non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. One of the diseases your research concludes is caused by Drufo. Can you explain what non-Hodgkin's lymphoma is?
Certainly. Non-Hodgkin's lymphoma is a specific type of cancer that affects the white blood cells in the body, which are called lymphocytes.
Where does lymphoma start?
Lymphoma can start in any area of the body containing lymph tissue, including the spleen, stomach lining, bone marrow, and many more places.
So where does lymphoma spread?
Well, once lymphoma is in the body, it can spread throughout the entire rest of the body. And some lymphomas are indolent, meaning they grow and spread slowly, but some are faster and more aggressive and, can spread really fast.
So what is the survival rate?
Well, the 5-year survival rate for non-Hodgkin's lymphoma is only 72%.
And how is it caused?
Non-Hodgkin's lymphoma is caused by particles on the scale of bacteria and viruses entering the body through the skin, being absorbed through the skin, or being breathed in, inhaled through the lungs.
Now, who else besides Dakota Weirs developed non-Hodgkin's lymphoma as a result of their exposure to Drufo?
Objection, speculation.
Response?
Your Honor, this isn't being offered for the truth of the matter. It just shows the impact on the listener. I'm asking Dr. Casey Rogers, who else has developed Drufo based on her study?
I'm going to permit it and overrule the objection.
Would you like me to re-ask the question?
Yes, please.
Now, who else besides Dakota Weirs developed non-Hodgkin's lymphoma as a result of their exposure to Drufo?
Other people in my case, in my study, as I said before, were 10 times more likely to be diagnosed with cancer than those without exposure. And specifically, the majority of those who were diagnosed with cancer were diagnosed with endocrine and exocrine-based variety, the latter of which includes non-Hodgkin's lymphoma.
In your expert opinion, having reviewed all the data in your study, what did you conclude about the health impacts of Drufo?
Well, in my expert opinion, reviewing all the data of the study, I have concluded that Drufo is a toxic carcinogenic chemical that when exposed to the human body has numerous negative health side effects, including many forms of cancer like non-Hodgkin's lymphoma.
And what is your expert opinion on the cause of Dakota Weir's non-Hodgkin's lymphoma?
Objection, lack of foundation.
Response?
Your Honor, could co-counsel please explain where I'm missing foundation?
Your Honor, the opposing counsel has not addressed how this witness would know about Dakota Weir's case specifically.
Plaintiff's counsel, can you do some preliminary questions to lay the foundation?
Yes, Your Honor.
But because we are limited on time, I'm going to overrule the objection. I'll presume we would have done that, and you can go forward with your direct.
All right. In that case, would you like me to ask the question, Your Honor?
Please.
And what is your expert opinion on the cause of Dakota Weir's non-Hodgkin's lymphoma?
Well, I have lots of knowledge in the area, and in my study, it was a case study. So I am used to reviewing medical records. I reviewed hundreds of medical records to try to figure out what the cause of people's cancers could be, people who worked with Drufo, and to try to determine whether Drufo could be that linking cause, that factor. And I have reviewed Ms. Dakota Weir's medical records. I've spoken with her doctor. And in my expert opinion, I have concluded that her non-Hodgkin's lymphoma was caused or very strongly correlated. And there's a high degree of medical probability that Weir's non-Hodgkin's lymphoma was caused by exposure to Drufo for a prolonged period of time.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
Cross-examination?
Yes, Your Honor. Okay, good morning, Dr. Rogers. Let's jump right into things. When the chemical Drufo was first released to market, you had seen reports that it was carcinogenic in rats, correct?
Yes, I had seen reports that it was carcinogenic in rats, or not seen, but I had heard of a rat study. And I had also just heard, I was skeptical. I'd agree, I was hearing reports that it could possibly have health benefits, and yes.
And for many years, you had heard reports about its potentially negative side effects.
Yes, that is why I decided to conduct my own study to see if it was in fact carcinogenic, and I just had skepticism myself that it was.
So, as you stated in your direct testimony today, you believe that the chemical was rushed to market when it was very first put on the market, correct?
Yes, I believe that the chemical Drufo had been rushed to the market without sufficient tests on safety.
And you conducted your study about the chemical after this, correct?
I conducted my study after it was released to the market, yes.
So you had developed your own opinions about the chemical prior to conducting your study?
I wouldn't say that I had my own opinions. However, it was a possibility. I did not believe it was carcinogenic necessarily. I just believed that there was a chance it was carcinogenic. And, I want to help people. And if a chemical is carcinogenic, then yeah.
So to reiterate, when the chemical was first released to market, it was your opinion that it had been rushed?
It was my opinion that it had been
And
rushed.
your study was conducted after it was released to market?
Counsel, we're going to let the witness finish her answer before you ask your next question, please. Witness, go ahead and state your answer.
Can you repeat the question?
Your study was conducted after it was released to market?
Yes, my study was conducted after it was released to the market.
Okay, now let's move on to the study itself.
Mm-hmm.
As a professor, you must be familiar with the scientific method, correct?
Yes, I am very familiar with the scientific method.
And in the scientific method, all variables are controlled, meaning they're kept the same, except for one, which is changed to see its effects.
Yes, that is generally how most experiments should be performed.
Okay, so let's look at how you failed to do this. In your experiment, you looked at those who were often, sometimes, and never exposed to the chemical Drufo, correct?
Yes, I had 3 groups: people who were exposed to Drufo for a prolonged period of time, people who were only partially exposed to the chemical Drufo, and people who were never exposed to the chemical Drufo.
And people who were exposed for a prolonged period of time were mostly farmers and gardeners?
Yes, the people who were prolonged experience of time were farmers and gardeners, and so were people who were only partially exposed to the chemical.
Yes, and those who were never exposed were mostly not farmers and gardeners?
Yes, they were not farmers and gardeners.
Of course, farmers and gardeners oftentimes use pesticide?
Yes, so they often do use pesticides.
but people who are not farmers and gardeners usually don't use pesticide as much.
They usually do not use pesticides as much, but I chose to do my experiment in the way I did because I believed, and I still believe, that it would be inhumane to not do a case study, to actively expose people to this carcinogenic chemical and possibly ruin their lives, take away their livelihoods, make them sick. I understand that in the best, experiment possible, I would have just kept everyone in the same room, breathing the same air in the same bed, try to limit all the factors as much as possible. But I do not believe that would have been humane to expose people to a chemical that could give them cancer.
Okay, and pesticide can also cause non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, correct?
Certain pesticides can cause non-Hodgkin's lymphoma.
But you did not account for the use of pesticide in your study.
In my case, I was looking at the causes and effects of the chemical Drufo. So I was, in fact, mainly focusing on the chemical Drufo.
So that's a no, you did not account for the use of pesticide.
Well, of course, I was not one of my main factors that I was looking at, no.
In fact, there were several agricultural products that you were concerned about, correct?
I was concerned about Drufo.
And several other agricultural products?
I believe my main one was Drufo.
You made a witness statement in today's trial, correct?
Yes.
And in this witness statement, you said, although I am concerned about many agricultural products, Drufo caught my attention when it first came to market. Those are your own words, correct?
Yes, as I said, my main concern was Drufo, and that is
so
why—
you did not account for the use of these other agricultural products, though?
Counsel,
no.
you have to let the witness finish her answer before you're asking your next question.
Yes,
Witness, please go ahead and finish your answer.
Will you repeat your question, please?
So you did not account for the use of these other agricultural products in your study?
No, I did not. I was looking at the effects of Drufo specifically.
Furthermore, your study has not been peer-reviewed?
I do not believe that's in my witness statement, but would you like me to answer?
No, that's all right. So just to clarify, though, you failed to include in your witness statement whether or not this study was peer-reviewed.
I suppose it slipped my mind.
You didn't think it was important for the jury to hear that?
Well, if you'd like me to answer, I can completely answer. Although it is not my witness statement, I would be happy to tell you.
That's all right. I'm not asking you to do that. And you also didn't include in your witness statement the sample size of your study.
No, my study also is not here in court today. I'm mostly here to testify on my things, and it would add an unnecessary amount of information and time to include unnecessary things.
So you didn't think it was important for the jury to hear how many people were actually involved in the study?
Well, I wouldn't say that. I would just say that it slipped my mind. I did not put that in my witness statement, no.
Now, let's move on to Dakota Weir's. You have reviewed Ms. Weir's employment records for this trial, correct?
I have reviewed her employment records, her medical records, and I have spoken with her doctor, yes, so I can get the best understanding of what could have caused her cancer.
And so you know that she had not worn protective equipment while using the chemical for a period of 4 years?
Yes, I do know that, and that is why I would group her in with the people in my study who had been exposed to cancer for a prolonged period of time, although she was not in my study.
And you know that Ms. Weir's had not handled these products with care?
I believe that she might have, but I know that she did not wear protective equipment. Sadly, it's the truth in this country that a lot of workplaces do not give their employees proper protective equipment. And that is why it's so important for labels to have warnings, like, warning, this label, this chemical Drufo is carcinogenic.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Any redirect?
Can I get a time check?
2 minutes and 4 seconds.
Thank you so much. Very brief redirect, Your Honor. Dr. Rogers, how do you respond to the defense's argument that you didn't use a control group?
Well, as I was saying, I did not use a control group, but I did not use a control group because I believe it would be inhumane to expose people who were not previously exposed to just a Drufo, to just isolate the cause. I would not want to take away people's livelihoods, and I believe that would be unethical to possibly give people cancer.
Thank you, Dr. Rogers. No further questions at this time, Your Honor.
I believe you're muted, Your Honor.
Do you have any recross that's limited to the one question that was raised during redirect?
No recross, Your Honor.
We'll excuse this witness and have the plaintiffs completed their case in chief?
Yes, my apologies, Your Honor. Yes, the plaintiff at this time rests.
And we'll have the defendants please, or the defense please put forward your case in chief now.
Your Honor, at this time, the defense calls Ms. Blake Doncourt to the stand. All right. Good morning, Ms. Doncourt. Can you please state your name and spell your last for the record?
Good morning. My name is Blake Doncourt, Doncourt.
Now, to begin, what is your job?
I am the Chief Executive Officer or CEO of Lush Fertilizer.
Now, describe how you came about owning this company.
Well, since 2000, I have grown the company from an unknown producer of fertilizers to one of the world's largest producers of yard and commercial fertilizer.
Now, what is your philosophy behind this company?
Well, I believe that green grass is part of the American dream, and with that comes the responsibility of environmental protection.
And how did this mindset bring about your success?
Well, Lush Fertilizers.
Could you repeat your objection, please?
Yes, Your Honor. Relevance?
Your Honor, under the mock trial rules 406, this goes into the habit and routine practice of this company being diligent, meticulous, and incapable of releasing a harmful chemical into the environment, as it has showing a pattern of handling her company with care.
I think that I think plaintiff's counsel can address the credibility of that argument on cross-examination. So I'm going to overrule the objection.
Would you like me to repeat the question?
No need. Lush Fertilizer success has allowed me to direct 10% of our annual profits towards charities. And these charities, in turn, work hard to decrease our world's global nitrogen footprint.
Have you established any such charities of your own?
Yes, we've even established our own charity that works towards cleaning out the most polluted parts of our world's oceans.
And has this charity been recognized in the public domain?
Absolutely. My company was one of the recipients for the prestigious SEAL Business Sustainability Award.
And have you been personally recognized?
Oh, yes. I've received many awards for my humanitarian works. I was even personally nominated for the United Nations Champion of the Earth Award in 2020.
Now, this prestigious award recognizes environmental sustainability. What actions do you take in your company to uphold this environmental protection?
Careful and extensive research. I've devoted an entire team of experts that work towards our product's development. We also have various in-house studies to make sure that our product is completely safe before putting it out onto the market.
Now, are there any other steps that you take to ensure product safety regulation?
Yes, we maintain a very close relationship with the EPA, which is the Environmental Protection Agency, who has given us the clear to put our products out onto the market.
Now, moving directions, which product specifically is being contested here today?
Drufo.
And why is this?
Well, unfortunately, due to tragic circumstances, Dakota Weirs has brought accusations towards this chemical as being harmful and carcinogenic, which are untrue.
And let's talk a bit about these accusations. How do you feel about them?
Well, I am hopeful for Dakota's swift recovery. I hold no hard feelings towards her, but I must defend my company and the principles for which it stands.
And what is, now shifting directions, your relationship with Carson Durst?
Well, Carson Durst is a close family friend of mine.
And how did Carson Durst become employed for Lush Fertilizer?
Well, Carson Durst became employed when I gave her an internship upon finding out that she was having trouble finding a job after college.
Can you describe Ms. Durst's employment history?
Well, I had high hopes for her. I cared about her, of course, but many complaints were being brought up about her work ethic, so we put her on an employment improvement plan. But unfortunately, she still wasn't getting very better, and many complaints were still being brought to my attention. And in truth, she just wasn't handling her job with care.
And now, what did you do about this?
Well, I had to do what was necessary, and I had to put my connections with her aside and let her go.
And then what happened?
Well, Carson became employed at Tara's Greenery, which is our rivals, and this breached a contract that she had signed with us at the beginning of her employment. This was taken up in a separate court case.
And what happened next?
Well, we followed all the steps necessary, and we settled on a 6-month delay for her employment at Tara's Greenery.
Now, at this time, I would like to turn your attention towards what has already been entered into evidence as Exhibit 4. That's it.
It's not, was it? It's not working.
Okay, can you see this?
Yes, I can.
Now, referring to this email, have you ever seen this document before?
No, this email was never delivered to me.
Now, lastly, Miss Doncourt, would you ever knowingly release a harmful product into the environment?
Absolutely not. I pride myself as being an environmentalist, which is demonstrated through my various donations to charities. My company is handled with care.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
Cross-examination.
Yes, Your Honor. Good morning, Ms. Doncourt.
Good morning.
I'd like to begin by talking about Lush's finances and the process of creating Drufo. Are you familiar with the process known as baking?
Yes, I am.
And is it true that if you had chosen to proceed with this process and bake Drufo, it would have made it safe and non-toxic, correct?
Well, yes, it would remove some of these risks, but to this case and matter, there was little to no risk that it would elevate from our already various in-house studies that we conducted on Drufo.
But you admit that there was a level of toxicity in your fertilizer.
In significant levels, yes.
But there was still a level of toxicity.
That's true.
And you say that you chose not to bake Drufo because of the cost.
That was one of the reasons. We had to pay off to capitalists who provided our company with seed funds. Without these seed funds, there would be no company.
Yes, and you even did an analysis of these costs of baking fertilizer.
That is true.
This report has been marked as Exhibit 8. Your Honor, permission for my co-counsel to share Exhibit 8 with the witness.
Granted.
Ms. Doncourt, can you see that?
Yes, I can.
Do you recognize it?
I do. This is the amortization table I had made with members of my company.
And is it a fair and accurate representation of that table?
Yes, it is.
Your Honor, at this time, I move to admit Exhibit 8 into evidence.
Any objection?
Yes, Your Honor, this document is hearsay.
Can you explain how it's hearsay?
I believe that the contents of this document was made out of court, and if it regards specifically the finances of this company, it is hearsay.
Counsel, is this being offered to prove the contents of the document?
It is, Your Honor, but it is admissible as a statement by a party opponent.
I'm going to overrule the objection and allow it.
Yes, Your Honor. Permission to publish to the jury.
Granted.
All right. Ms. Doncourt, this analysis shows that the company would lose only $250,000 in the first year of baking Drufo.
That is true. As the company owner, I do have to consider financial decisions.
Yes, but you also say that your company has been so successful that you can give away 10% of your annual profits, which would be roughly $167,500 during that first year.
That is true. And with those, with the money that we would still be able to use, I would still be able to make those considerable donations to charities, which is something that we pride ourselves as we are, as my company, are environmentalists.
Yes, but Drufo isn't 100% safe, is it?
Well, nothing can ever really be 100% safe. I mean, scientific, it's just impossible.
I'm sorry, Ms. Doncourt, that wasn't my question. I was asking, is Drufo 100% safe?
No, it's not, but again, nothing ever can be.
Are you aware that over the next 50 years, by the time Dakota would be 70, Lush will have saved $16,115,795 by not baking Drufo?
That is true. We would be able to use a lot of these savings for donations and ways to otherwise improve our company.
Now, I'd like to focus in on the purpose behind baking Drufo. You claim that Drufo doesn't cause cancer?
No, it does not.
But you also knew that there was a risk to your consumers.
Can you elaborate? Because I do not believe that there's a specific risk towards Drufo to our consumers.
I believe you mentioned that, like all chemicals, Drufo posed a slight risk to consumers.
Well, yes, when you elaborate like that, yes, that's true. That's the same with any chemical.
Yes, but baking Drufo was specifically suggested to you in your company's report.
Can you elaborate where in this report? Because I was not made aware that I would need to worry about Drufo being carcinogenic. I have seen no valid studies linking Lush fertilizer towards cancer.
So you don't recall the mention of Drufo needing to be baked?
Suggested or not, according to my company, we had decided that it was better than not that we did not bake our product.
And even though it was safe, you still spent valuable time and money analyzing the costs of baking Drufo?
Yes, that's true. Again, as a company owner, I need to consider all financial decisions towards my company.
Thank you, Ms. Doncourt. No further questions at this time, Your Honor.
Any redirect?
Yes, Your Honor, briefly. Ms. Doncourt, why do you not bake your product?
Well, there was little to no risk that it elevated. I mean, we had already done various in-house studies and had multiple researchers trying to find carcinogens in Drufo, and we had not found any. I had seen nothing presented to me that Drufo was carcinogenic, and therefore there was no need to just waste money like that by baking it for something that already was safe.
So you had found no valid studies that Drufo was carcinogenic?
Absolutely not. None that were presented to me.
And then, as we had mentioned previously about your close connection with the Environmental Protection Agency, did your company and your products meet all of the standards of the federally backed EPA?
Absolutely. There was no need under federal or state law to put warning labels on our product, and we have followed all the steps necessary to put our product safely out onto the market.
And lastly, I understand that these are personal matters, but could you please describe your financial situation and how it would impact your testimony today?
Well, I don't believe that it would impact my testimony at all. I had recently gone out of a divorce with my ex-spouse, and people are assuming that I needed some money from not baking Drufo to pay off monthly payment to her. But I have enough money to both take care of myself, make contributions to charities, and support my ex-spouse.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
Any limited recross?
No, Your Honor.
Okay. We'll excuse this witness and the defense can call their next witness.
Can you hear me fine, Your Honor? All right. Your Honor, may I call Skylar Weirs to the stand?
You may.
Okay. Good afternoon, Mrs. Weirs. Could you please state your first and last name and spell the last for the record?
My name is Skylar Weirs. That's Weirs.
And Mrs. Weirs, what is your connection to Dakota Weirs in this case?
Dakota Weirs is my twin sibling.
And before Mrs. Dakota Weirs got diagnosed with cancer, what were you doing?
Well, right before my sister got diagnosed with cancer, I just so happened to write an article questioning that popular narrative out there that there is any link between Drufo and cancer.
Have you written any other articles?
Yes, I write extensively about agritech and GMOs, among other things.
And for who do you write these articles?
I write my articles for the Rationalist Society, which publishes the Rationalist magazine.
And what sort of articles does the Rationalist publish?
Well, the Rationalist encourages readers to question scientific jargon and rhetoric, and we publish about things such as GMOs, climate change, vaccines, etc.
And at the time at working at the Rationalist, have you ever published documents on agritech, or in this case, Drufo?
Yes, I was actually specifically chosen by my publisher to write an extensive series on agritech and Drufo.
And what is Drufo's importance to today's case?
Well, Drufo is being falsely accused of being carcinogenic, which is just not true.
Okay. And before writing these articles on Drufo and agritech, how long did you spend researching Drufo and agritech companies?
I spent almost a year dedicating every second of my life to doing in-depth research from reputable sources.
And in this year, what sort of publications did you read and research?
Well, I love the research process. I like to start big and narrow in. So what I did was look at publications by various agritech companies and then track down the studies referenced in those publications and study those as well.
Okay. And besides the publications from agritech companies, did you read any other publications?
Yes, I like to make sure that my sources are as reputable as possible. So I looked at sources from the United States Department of Agriculture, or USDA, and the National Association of State Departments of Agriculture, or NASDA, as well.
Okay. So much of your research that you conducted was from publications from the US government.
Yes, exactly. I think it's just want to get the most trustworthy sources that I can.
And would you say that you're well educated on agritech and Drufo?
Yes, I would. And honestly, given my lack of bias and my consideration of all sources, I would say no one has the perspective on modern agritech that I do outside of the USDA and NASDA.
Your Honor, at this point, I would like to enter Mrs. Skylar Weirs as an expert in modern agritech and in Drufo under Rule 702.
Any objections?
Yes, Your Honor. Permission to conduct voir dire.
Go ahead.
Hello, Ms. Weirs. Let's start with your education. You've never attended college?
No, I don't believe that college is the only way to get education.
You have no graduate degree of any kind?
No, like I said, I don't believe that's the only way to be educated.
And you only have general knowledge of modern agricultural technology that anyone with an internet connection could obtain?
Well, yes, but nobody else has obtained it, and I've done extensive research.
Thank you, Ms. Weirs. A yes or no will suffice. And you now work a part-time position at Applebee's in order to make a living?
Yes.
Objection, Your Honor. Relevance.
Your Honor, this goes to show the witness's financial bias and credibility in this case.
I'm going to permit and overrule the objection.
So you do work a part-time position at Applebee's, correct?
Yeah, in addition to being a journalist.
And you researched Drufo for less than a year immediately after you were hired?
Basically, yes, during this almost year, I dedicated every second of my life to research, yes.
Thank you, I heard a yes. Your Honor, the plaintiff objects to the admission of this witness as an expert in agritech, as opposing counsel has yet to confirm Ms. Weirs' qualifications at this trial in their line of questioning as required by the pretrial motion. In this case, opposing counsel needed to show that Ms. Weirs spent considerable time researching agritech companies, that she reviewed publications written by those companies, that she reviewed research studies referenced in those publications, and reviewed information maintained by the USDA and NASDA. And as we don't believe that they have confirmed those qualifications, we would object to her admission as an expert.
In the excellent objection. In the interest of time, I'm going to overrule it and admit the witness as an expert. And I'm going to direct defense counsel to continue with your direct examination.
Yes, Your Honor.
Now, Mrs. Weirs, how has Lush Fertilizer been treated by the public?
Well, Lush Fertilizer has been the target of a pseudoscientific hit job, basically where people wage a PR campaign to damage the reputation that's just false.
Do these PR campaigns happen often in the agritech sector?
Yes, mostly led by the older sector of agritech who just are against new technology that might put them out of business.
And for foundation, Has one of these PR campaigns happened against a company that you know of?
Just off the top of my head, I can think of the company Monsanto, who is on the brink of effectively revolutionizing corn seed genomics and herbicides, which would increase crop
Objection
yields.
relevance.
Defense
Oh, may I
counsel,
respond?
your response?
Yes, Your Honor. As today's case revolves around Lush Fertilizer, which could have been possibly conducted a PR campaign against, I'm simply allowing Mrs. Weirs to lay foundation for what a PR campaign can look like to see how it may have been unfairly judged by the public.
Your Honor, may I respond?
I'm going to overrule the objection and just note that with the time constraint we have, if one side wants to spend their time laying lots of foundation, they may be not putting other evidence into the record. So I'm going to go ahead and let the direct continue.
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. Now, did this PR campaign conducted against Monsanto succeed?
Yes, unfortunately, and it also made a lot of farmers scared to try these GMOs. So it really just hurts crop yields in poor countries like sub-Saharan Africa and India.
So PR campaigns can harm the public more than they help the public.
Yes, greatly.
So similar to Monsanto, is it possible that a PR campaign could have possibly been conducted against Lush Fertilizer?
Yes, that's exactly what I believe is happening.
Did the opposing counsel propose an objection? Didn't hear that.
Yes, Your Honor. The plaintiff objects to speculation.
And your response, defense counsel?
Your Honor, Mrs. Weirs isn't speculating. She's reasoning off a fact of the millions of dollars that have gone into harming Lush Fertilizer's perception by the public.
Let's hear the witness answer the question, and then if it is speculation, I'll strike it.
Yes, Your Honor. Now, has a PR campaign been launched against Lush Fertilizer?
Yes, there's been a lot of false information spread about Lush.
Now, on the subject of grass seed products, what are these products typically meant to do?
Well, what grass seed products do is kill weeds and make the grass look better. And because they kill weeds, which put nitrogen into the soil, they have to replace it with synthetic nitrogen.
And are there any harmful effects caused by nitrogen?
Yes, synthetic nitrogen is extremely detrimental to both the public and the environment as it creates dead zones in water runoff, and it also is carcinogenic.
Okay. Now, how has Drufo effectively proven safety in the agritech sector against nitrogen?
Well, Drufo functions as an extremely effective bonding agent. So what it does is it bonds to the synthetic nitrogen in Lush fertilizer, as well as the other active ingredients such as phosphorus and potassium, and prevents the synthetic nitrogen from running into the groundwater and harming the public.
So with these bonding agents, how often does Drufo need to be applied each year?
Because it's so effective, it only needs to be applied 1 or even 2 times a year.
And compared to other fertilizers, how often do other fertilizers need to be applied?
Well, other fertilizers need to apply these harmful chemicals upwards of 5 or 6 times per year.
So how does this reduction of application increase Drufo safety?
Well, because it needs to be applied less, the public is being exposed to these chemicals less, and it's also being exposed to the environment less.
Okay. Now, besides being a fertilizer, does Drufo act as any other grass seed product?
Yes, Drufo also acts as an effective pesticide.
And what benefits does it have as a pesticide?
Well, most other pesticides contain known carcinogens such as glyphosate and arsenic, and because it functions as a pesticide, it eliminates the need for these known carcinogens.
And are there any harmful effects from glyphosate and arsenic?
Yes, the International Agency for Research on Cancer classifies arsenic as a known carcinogen and glyphosate as a potential carcinogen. So when these get into the groundwater, they greatly harm the public, much more than Drufo.
Does Drufo contain any of these harmful chemicals?
No, Drufo has been shown to be completely safe.
And is there a single conclusive link between Drufo and cancer?
No, there has not been.
For expert opinion.
Response?
Yes, Your Honor. Mrs. Weirs has been entered as an expert.
Your Honor, may I respond?
Go ahead.
Your Honor, while Ms. Weirs has been entered as an expert in modern agricultural technology, she hasn't been entered in any sort of medical expertise, and as such, she cannot testify as to any potential link between Drufo and cancer.
I'm going to overrule the objection, but you can certainly cover this in your cross-examination.
Yes, Your Honor.
Now, is there a single conclusive link that you found between Drufo and cancer?
No, in all of my extensive research, I did not find one single valid study proving a causal link between Drufo and cancer.
So then how does Drufo compare to other carcinogens?
It is much, much safer for the public.
Okay. And has Lush Fertilizer taken any other incentives to reduce the nitrogen contamination in the environment?
Yes, Lush Fertilizer handles both their product and the environment with care. So Lush donates 10% of its annual profits to charities dedicated to cleaning up nitrogen runoff.
Thank you. That is all. No further questions.
Cross-examination.
Yes, Your Honor. Hello again, Ms. Weirs. I'd like to discuss your views on modern agritech further. You support the corporation Monsanto?
Yes, I believe that they were extremely effective in helping crop yield.
And this is a company that has, in your words, effectively monopolized several markets?
Yes.
And you characterize them as being part of a pseudoscientific hit job?
Yes, a PR campaign was waged against them.
Now, I'd like to talk about your career as a journalist. You work for Rationalist Magazine, which is a publication that promotes scientific skepticism?
Yes, we just encourage our readers to question fake news.
Thank you, Ms. Weirs. A yes or no will suffice. But you admit your articles haven't been lucrative.
No, they have not.
And you say you've missed out on many potential job opportunities?
Yes, just because my articles are so controversial.
I want to discuss your research on Drufo more. You claim that Drufo is safe for use?
Yes, Drufo is completely safe.
Synthetic nitrogen is one of the key ingredients in Lush's product.
Among other ingredients, yes.
Yet nitrogen has been linked to various kinds of cancer and other diseases.
Yes, that's exactly why Drufo is helpful, because it bonds to this nitrogen.
And you classify Drufo as a pesticide?
Drufo does act as a pesticide.
I'd now like to direct your attention to Exhibit 1, which has been previously admitted. My co-counsel should be sharing that shortly. Can you see that all right, Ms. Weirs?
Yes.
On this label, there is no mention of any of the ingredients, including Drufo, being a pesticide.
Objection, Your Honor. Lack of personal knowledge.
Response?
Your Honor, this witness is an expert and has testified that she researched this specific compound for almost a year. I would argue that she would absolutely have knowledge of the ingredient list on the fertilizer that she spent a year researching.
May I respond, Your Honor?
I'm going to permit it and overrule the objection. Go ahead.
Ms. Weirs, on this label, there is no mention of any of the ingredients, including Drufo, being a pesticide?
No, there is no mention of that on here.
And you agree that pesticides are, by definition, poisonous and hazardous to living organisms, including humans?
Of course, all pesticides are, but Lush is much safer than others.
But you would agree that pesticides are poisonous?
Yes, that is their intended use.
You're not aware of any studies linking Drufo to cancer?
No, not a single valid study.
But you would agree that pesticides can cause cancer?
I would agree that glyphosate and arsenic and other pesticides can cause cancer, yes.
Thank you, Ms. Weirs. Your lawyer will return for redirect and you can explain further then. Right now, I just need a simple yes or no answer. So pesticides can cause cancer?
I do believe I already said yes.
And there are no warnings regarding nitrogen, another key ingredient to this fertilizer, as a link to cancer or any other diseases on this label?
Well, nitrogen does not cause cancer.
So nitrogen doesn't cause cancer?
No, or else I assume that we would all have cancer right now, as it does compose most of our air.
But you said earlier that it is part of fertilizers that can cause cancer, and this is why Drufo is, in your words, safer?
Oh, yes, synthetic nitrogen can cause cancer, yes.
And let's discuss Dakota. It's your assertion that you are testifying today free of any personal bias?
Yes, I just want to spread the truth.
And this is despite the fact that Dakota is your twin?
Yes, it is.
I want to talk about your possible financial motivation for being here today. You admit that you are a gambler, correct?
Objection, Your Honor. Relevance?
Response?
Your Honor, Oh, my apologies, Your Honor. This goes to the witnesses' credibility and their possible financial bias in this case.
Overruled.
Ms. Weirs, you are a gambler, correct?
Yes, it is part of my past, unfortunately.
And you said in your statement that you blame major agriculture players for your economic instability.
No, my economic instability is due to March Madness a few years back, unfortunately.
And you're currently working at Applebee's as a server to make ends meet?
Yeah, I do need to put food on the table.
You currently have outstanding debt from your sports betting?
Unfortunately, yes, I do.
And your parents have cut you off financially due to your decision to forego college?
Yes, my dad has.
And you and Dakota are the only beneficiaries of your parents' estate?
That's true.
Your parents were assisting you with your gambling debts prior to Dakota's illness?
Not prior to Dakota's illness, prior to my mother's death.
Yes, but they were assisting you with those debts?
Yeah, but it has nothing to do with Dakota's medical costs.
But now your father is paying Dakota's medical bills rather than your gambling.
Yes, but it's not really an either or sort of situation.
But he is paying those and has ceased paying your gambling debts?
Yes, because of my decision not to go to college.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
Any redirect?
Yes, Your Honor. Now, let's start with your potential financial bias. How would you benefit if Dakota won this case?
Honestly, if Dakota won this case, it would be much better for both me and my family. The reason I'm testifying isn't for finances. It's because I just want to spread the truth.
Okay. And in your time of researching over all sorts of agri-tech companies and Drufo, was there a single time that you find a conclusive link between Drufo and cancer?
No, there's been no conclusive link. Nobody has proved that Drufo causes cancer.
Thank you, Your Honor. At this time, no further questions.
Any limited recross?
No recross, Your Honor.
We'll excuse this witness and the defense can call their next witness.
The defense calls Dr. Williams. Okay, good morning, Dr. Williams. Could you please state your name and spell your last for the jury?
Of course, that's Dr. Devin Williams, Williams.
Okay, let's get into this. So could you please describe where you work currently?
Of course, currently I'm the lead toxicologist in the product and development engineering team up at Lush Fertilizer.
And how long have you been working at Lush Fertilizer?
Gosh, for the last decade now, but for the last 7 years, I've been the lead toxicologist.
Okay, so over the last 7 years as the lead toxicologist, what sort of tasks did you perform?
Well, primarily what I do is focus on the chemical agent known as Drufo. And as a toxicologist, what I do is look at how Drufo can affect our biological systems.
And what sort of skills did you develop as a toxicologist?
Well, I develop a lot of finely tuned skills with analyzing all of the data I gather, both from outside sources as well as inside sources, compiling that data and analyzing it to understand how these outside agents affect our biological systems.
Okay, let the record reflect that I'm now having co-counsel screen share what has been marked as Exhibit 9.
The record will so reflect.
I'm sorry, what was that, Your Honor?
Just saying the record will reflect what you are, that Exhibit
Yes,
9
sir.
is being shown.
Okay, Dr. Williams, do you recognize this document?
I do.
And what is it?
This is my curriculum vitae, which outlines all my educational and professional background.
Do you update this document regularly?
I do. I tend to get a lot of professional and educational experience. So every time I have that new experience or education, I add that onto my curriculum vitae.
And after you get this new experience or education, do you add it on soon after when you first got it?
Pretty much immediately after, just to make sure I update it regularly and have it in cases such as these.
And is creating a CV like this a standard practice of your profession?
Oh yes, every professional will have a curriculum vitae and update it regularly.
At this time, the defense moves to admit Exhibit 9 into evidence.
Any objections?
Yes, Your Honor. Objection, hearsay.
And why is this hearsay?
It's an out-of-court statement.
Defense counsel, are you offering this to prove that Dr. Williams has these qualifications?
Yes, Your Honor, we are offering this for the truth of the matter asserted, and it is hearsay. However, it falls under an exception to hearsay under Rule 8036, records of regularly conducted activity.
I'm going to allow it, and plaintiff's counsel, you can inquire about any credibility issues on cross-examination.
Okay, so using this document, could you please outline your educational background for the jury?
Of course, I received my undergraduate degree at the University of Utah, where I received a degree in toxicology. The rest of my education was received at CSU right here in Colorado, where I received my master's degree in pharmacotoxicology, and I got a PhD in forensic toxicology.
Okay, and now before I move on, just in case it wasn't clear, could this document please be published to the jury?
Yes, it can be published.
Okay. Now, could you please explain what exactly toxicology is?
Of course, the essence of toxicology relies on analyzing how our environmental factors and the chemical agents affect our biological systems.
And is the human body included in these biological systems?
Yes, they are. That's the main thing we study is how we respond as humans to all of these agents around us.
And how is toxicology relevant in today's trial?
Oh, it's extremely relevant. The crux of today's case rests on how Drufo affects the human body, which is exactly what I analyzed.
Okay, I'll now have my co-counsel unshare the screen. And the defense moves to admit Dr. Williams as an expert in the field of toxicology.
Any objection?
A brief audio, Your Honor.
Go ahead.
Dr. Williams, you're not a medical doctor.
No, but as a toxicologist, my large focus is on the human body, so I do get that medical aspect to my job.
But are you a medical doctor?
I didn't.
Objection asked and answered.
I'll move on. You don't hold any degrees or training in human medicine?
No, but again, as a toxicologist, my main focus is on how chemical agents affect the human body, which is where I get that sort of medical aspect.
Thank you, Dr. Williams. Your attorney will return for redirect, and you can answer those questions later. Right now, I just need a simple yes or no. You haven't published any articles on non-Hodgkin's lymphoma?
Not specifically non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, no.
And you haven't published any articles on any types of cancer?
No, my job is as a toxicologist, not as an oncologist.
You don't mention in your witness statement having met this witness before today?
No, but I study how Drufo affects any human being, and as a human, Dakota would fall under this category.
But you don't mention reviewing their medical records?
No, again,
Objection outside the scope of voir dire.
I'm going to permit it.
Thank you, Your Honor. Would you like me to ask a question, Dr. Williams?
That would be great, thank you.
You don't mention reviewing their medical records?
No, but again, I study all human beings and how Drufo affects them, so no, I did not.
And you don't mention speaking with their doctor?
I have not.
Your Honor, the plaintiff does not object to Dr. Williams being admitted as an expert in human toxicology, but the plaintiff does admit to Dr. Williams testifying as an expert in non-Hodgkin's lymphoma or cancer in general, specifically regarding Dakota Weirs. This due to their lack of knowledge, skill, training, education, and experience in these areas.
I'm going to go ahead and admit the doctor as expert witness, and you can address those issues on cross-examination. And I'll turn the questioning back over to defense counsel to continue with your direct examination.
Okay, so Dr. Williams, could you please elaborate on the relationship between toxicology and medicine?
Of course. So as part of analyzing how chemical agents affect our biological systems, we do a lot of data and research on people who have been exposed to these types of chemicals and the resulting effects on their body, which is where we get that medical aspect to my job.
Okay, now let's move on to the chemical Drufo. Are you familiar with this chemical?
Oh, very familiar.
And how do you know it is?
Well, Drufo is the main agent that we work at Lush Fertilizer and the main focus of my job as the toxicologist.
And why was the chemical Drufo created?
Well, Drufo is an incredible binding agent that binds the nitrogen within the fertilizer to the soil, which prevents a process known as eutrophication, which includes excess nitrates and phosphates running off into the water supplies and groundwater, which can affect the human body.
Okay, now let's move on. Is the chemical Drufo used worldwide?
No, unfortunately, it is banned in the EU, but not to because of any carcinogenic effects, but because of some faulty lab conditions that didn't mirror the real life applications.
Okay, now moving on, are you familiar with the study conducted by Dr. Casey Rogers?
I am. It was one of the studies that I reviewed in my research of Drufo.
And what are your thoughts on this study?
Well, I think this study simply wasn't handled with care. What Dr. Rogers did is compared apples to oranges. They took part of their variables included people who had never used those sort of chemicals and rarely used them, if at all, and then compared them with farmers who use a multitude of chemicals and have a vastly different lifestyle that could affect the outcome of the trials. Additionally, it wasn't peer-reviewed and it was never replicated, completely eliminating any scientific merit the study could have.
So could you please elaborate on the importance of having studies peer-reviewed?
Of course, what peer review does is it makes sure that all of the study was, well-founded and that the variables were limited and tested for in a manner that would constitute for proper scientific methods.
And could you also elaborate on the importance of having studies replicated?
Of course, what replication does, it ensures that the data received from the original study proves a correlation. If it's not replicated, then it could just be a fluke or a one-off.
Okay, so now back to your own opinions. What sort of information have you reviewed about Drufo working as a toxicologist for Lush?
Oh gosh, over the decade I've been working there, I've seen hundreds of studies about Drufo and the effects on the human body.
And what valid studies have you seen linking the chemical Drufo to development of cancer?
Absolutely none. There are no valid studies correlating Drufo to cancer.
So based on this, in your expert opinion, is the chemical Drufo carcinogenic?
Absolutely not. There's no way that I believe Drufo could cause cancer.
And so can the chemical Drufo cause non-Hodgkin's lymphoma?
No, if it can't cause cancer, then it can't cause non-Hodgkin's lymphoma.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions at this time.
Cross-examination?
Yes, Your Honor. Good afternoon, Dr. Williams.
Good afternoon.
I'd like to discuss the use of Lush fertilizer in other countries. Drufo has been banned in the entire European Union?
Yeah, as a result of those faulty lab conditions, it was unfortunately banned.
And you've claimed that the reason Drufo is banned in France because of nitrogen?
Well, yes, it didn't mirror the real life application of Drufo binding to real soil. It used that synthetic soil that altered the amount of nitrogen.
And you've claimed that the reason Drufo is banned in France is because of nitrogen?
Yes, because of the faulty lab conditions, it produced an excess amount of that nitrogen. And instead of running additional tests and having it replicated, they just took those.
Thank you so much. I heard a yes. But you're not a member of the EU regulatory body, are you?
No, but I have quite a large knowledge on it due to my job as a toxicologist, just of standards. But.
All right. I want to turn your attention to what has already been admitted as Exhibit 1.
Of course.
My co-counsel should be sharing that. Can you see the list of ingredients containing Drufo?
Yes, I can.
Now, I'd like you to look at what's been marked as Exhibit 2, the French label. Can you see there is nitrogen listed as an ingredient?
I can in the English translation.
But the only difference in ingredients between the French label and the US label is that the French specifically banned Drufo itself?
Yes, it was the Drufo that was banned.
Now, I want to talk about the testing phase of Drufo at Lush. You said that when you joined Lush, 50% of the original Drufo development team have already moved on to other ventures outside the company.
Yes, that is
Objection,
correct.
relevance.
Response?
Your Honor, I'm just trying to lay further foundation to a point I'll be making about Dr. Devin Williams' job at Lush.
And what is the relevance of that information?
Their job was, may I have a moment to speak with co-counsel?
Sure.
Thank you, Your Honor. This is relevant because it shows that she had a lack of data and not enough knowledge about Drufo.
I'm going to overrule the objection. You can go forward.
Thank you. And your role was to fill in as a technician?
Sorry, can you repeat that?
I'm so sorry. Would you like me to repeat the last question or the question I'm asking now?
The current question, please.
And your role was to fill in as a technician?
Originally, yes, that was my role.
But you said when you were promoted to lead the labs, your research was largely to oversee the environmental impacts.
Yes, it was.
So you said when you were promoted to lead the labs, your research, so you weren't a supervisor when Drufo was tested for whether it causes cancer.
I'm so sorry. The audio is a little bad on my end. Could you repeat that one more time?
Yes, thank you. I will speak up. So you weren't a supervisor when Drufo was tested for whether it causes cancer?
Not at the beginning when I was first hired as a technician, but over the last 7 years as lead toxicologist, that has been my job.
So you weren't a supervisor?
Not originally, but I am currently.
Dr. Williams, you have critiqued Dr. Rogers' study for not being published or peer-reviewed.
Peer-reviewed or replicated was my primary concern.
But Dr. Williams, we don't have any record of you publishing your research on Drufo, do we?
No, my primary focus is gathering outside data and data from our in-house studies and analyzing that.
But we don't have any peer reviews of your study either, do we?
I personally have not conducted specific studies, but I have not brought anything about the studies conducted by our scientists at Lush Fertilizer, as I was not asked to.
Finally, I want to talk about the monetary incentives in this case. If Lush were to lose this case, would this hurt you financially?
Minimally in the short run, yes, but I am a well-educated toxicologist, and in the long run, I could find a job anywhere.
But you believe that if a U.S. court were to find that Drufo causes cancer, it would create a whole new host of bureaucratic roadblocks with the EU?
Well, I'm not quite familiar with how the bureaucratic aspects work with the EU, but I can imagine, based on my limited knowledge, there might be some roadblocks, yes.
So, meaning the company wouldn't be able to sell products that contain Drufo in the EU?
Objection, speculation.
I'm going to overrule it and you can go forward with the question.
Thank you. Meaning the company wouldn't be able to sell products that contain Drufo in the EU?
It is a possibility, yes, an unfortunate one, but my concern is making sure consumers are safe, not resubmitting to the EU.
But you couldn't sell products that contain Drufo in the EU?
That is a large possibility, but again, my main concern is in selling products in the EU. It's keeping consumers safe.
Thank you, Dr. Williams. And you're a paid employee of Lush?
Currently, yes.
And you admit to having a financial bias in this case?
I do have a minimal one, but I'm also a assistant professor, so I do receive a large amount of income from that as well.
But you admit to specifically, in your witness statement, having a financial bias in this case?
Again, minimally in the short run, I do, but the long run, it doesn't really matter.
Your Honor, thank you. I have no further questions at this time.
Any redirect?
Yes, Your Honor. Okay, I'd like to begin. Could you please address, or could you please elaborate on your financial bias in today's case?
Of course. I have a minimal financial bias just due to the in the short run, as I am currently employed, by Lush Fertilizer. However, in the long run, I have served as a professor, which is a lucrative job. Additionally, being well educated, I could receive a job as a toxicologist anywhere I wanted. So in the long run, there is no financial bias.
Okay, and now moving on. Could you please elaborate on the chemical Drufos ban in the European Union?
Of course. So again, the ban in the European Union is not due to any carcinogenic effects of Drufo. Basically, what happened is due to the mismatch of synthetic soils versus the real life nutrient-rich soils in the environment, there was an excess amount of nitrogen released during these experiments. And instead of replicating these experiments in the EU as any good scientist should, they just took these original studies and unfortunately banned Drufo.
Okay, and just to clarify, what sort of cancer risks was this ban based on?
Absolutely none. There is no cancer risk with Drufo that caused it to be banned.
Objection, out of the scope of the witness.
Response?
Opposing counsel addressed the European Union ban of the chemical, so I'm simply addressing that and why it was banned.
Overruled. Go ahead.
So just to clarify, what sort of cancer risks was the chemical Drufo banned in the European Union for?
Well, it just wasn't banned for any carcinogenic risk because Drufo is safe.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Any limited recross?
No, Your Honor.
We'll excuse this witness. Does the defense have any other witnesses?
The defense rests, Your Honor.
Okay. We'll go ahead and proceed to closing arguments.
Yes, Your Honor. My apologies. Can you see and hear me okay?
Yes.
Your Honor, I believe you're muted.
Yes.
Okay. And before I begin, I would like to remind the court that the plaintiff has requested any remaining time be used for rebuttal closing.
Absolutely.
All right, thank you. Members of the jury, today you hold the fate of Dakota Weir's life in your hands. A future that has been cut short by a company that carelessly cut corners only to avoid cutting into their own profits. Ms. Weirs has been diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, a life-threatening disease that has destroyed her happiness and caused her incomparable physical, mental, and emotional pain and suffering. Today, we, the plaintiff, have the burden of proving Lush's negligence by a preponderance of evidence to show you that one of the stories here today is more than 50% true. That means if you believe Dakota's case is even 51% more compelling than the wild theories provided by the defense, you must find Lush Fertilizer guilty of negligence. To return a verdict for Dakota, we must have demonstrated 4 things. That the defendant had a duty to protect consumers, that it breached that duty by neglecting safety concerns, that their failure caused Dakota suffering, and that suffering comes with damages. You have seen that Lush Fertilizer admits to cheaply manufacturing their product, cutting their costs by choosing not to bake a key ingredient of their fertilizer, Drufo. We have presented exhibits 1 and 2, showing Drufo as the main ingredient to Lush's product and containing not even a whisper of a warning to any potential user of its cancer-causing nature. You've seen that Lush covered up the story of Carson Durst, a loyal employee cast aside for raising questions about studies the company itself conducted and who was fired for voicing her concerns. And you have seen that Lush put its image first as they donated excess profits to charity rather than ensuring consumer safety. Lush dismissed the testimony of Dr. Casey Rogers, an expert in toxicology and carcinogenic products and chemicals. She testified through Exhibit 3 that prolonged exposure to Drufo created a clear and present risk of developing cancer, and that Ms. Weirs was a victim of that risk. But perhaps the most important thing this case has given you is the testimony of 20-year-old Dakota Weirs. Through her words, you have heard how she has been broken by this disease and how she realized that the only clear connection to her illness was Drufo. She has lost so much. A cherished connection to her beloved grandfather through music, her ties to her community, the feeling of pride from the acceptance to Juilliard, and hope for a future career ripe with opportunity. But all of that has been replaced by mental depression, a future destroyed, and a diagnosis with almost no hope of recovery. Dakota has lost practically everything, and the damages from her life cut short are incalculable. So how can we, the plaintiff, ask you to place a number to this destruction? Well, all we have to do is look back at Lush's own chart in Exhibit 8 to see how much money the company saved by choosing not to bake Drufo. Saving money over saving lives. $16,115,795. Members of the jury, that is how much money the company of Lush Fertilizer Incorporated will have saved by choosing not to make its products safe over the 70 years of Ms. Weirs' lifetime. That is the amount that we are asking you to return with today. On behalf of Dakota, we ask you to fine for the plaintiff, because when corners are cut for the sake of costs, there must be a consequence for her life cut short. Thank you.
Thank you. Counsel for defendant.
Yes, Your Honor. May it please the court. Good morning, members of the jury. Now, before we begin, I would like you to picture a box. It is made out of cardboard, about a foot tall and 2 feet wide. When you look closer, you see a black and white sticker printed on the box with a picture of a wine glass and a crack around the rim, and a big bolded words that say fragile, handle with care. Now, would you gently move this box or just toss it to the side? Today, you have witnessed a case of a flawed plaintiff that did not handle their case with care. More than a case, you've heard the tragic story of Dakota Weirs, who unfortunately suffers from non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. And on behalf of the defense, we greatly sympathize with Ms. Weirs and wish her a speedy recovery. Ms. Weirs unfortunately attempts to lay blame for this disease on my client, Lush Fertilizer. She falsely accuses my client of cutting corners and distributing unsafe chemicals among its many consumers. This is the same person who cut corners herself. Any chemical may be dangerous if used improperly, and Ms. Weirs used several. As humans, we hold the responsibility of handling our safety with care, and Dakota Weirs chose not to wear the proper protective gear in accordance with Lush's advisory label. And the result of this decision, Dakota Weirs tossed her future aside, and it shattered like glass. You heard another testimony from Carson Durst, a close family friend of the Doncourts. Ms. Durst felt betrayed by her best friend's mother and CEO of Lush Fertilizer. And for this, he tossed aside both her career and her relationship with the Doncourt family. Carson Durst was fired just 3 years after the beginning of their employment for cutting corners and not handling their job with care. Then Ms. Durst began working for the rival company of Lush Fertilizer, breaching a contract that they signed with Lush 3 years prior. For their blatant disregard for the rules and emotional involvement with Lush Fertilizer, members of the jury, you must dismiss their biased testimony immediately. Dr. Casey Rogers, a big name for a big case. Dr. Rogers is a professor at University of California, Berkeley, and did in fact perform a case study on Drufo that was not handled carefully. This study was misleading and failed to follow the scientific method and address other linkages between pesticides and non-Hodgkin's lymphoma besides that of Drufo. However, I understand that the credentials of Dr. Rogers are impressive. So if she leads you to question the safety of the chemical Drufo, remember Dakota Weirs' misuse of Lush Fertilizer and her complete lack of protective equipment. In all scenarios, by failing to meet the preponderance of the evidence, the negligence falls on the plaintiff. Ladies and gentlemen, the plaintiff holds the burden of proof today. This burden was not met. In attempting to accuse CEO Ms. Blank Doncourt of cutting corners and allowing a carcinogenic chemical to be sold, The plaintiff only revealed that she's a philanthropist and humanitarian who regularly and willingly donates her profits to charities. Charities that, ladies and gentlemen, are directed towards environmental protection. Allowing a harmful chemical to enter the environment is the last thing on Ms. Doncourt's mind. Dr. Devin Williams and her experience with Drufo will completely unravel the claims made by Dr. Rogers at the beginning of this case. She showed you how Drufo is the next generation of an environmentally friendly fertilizer, carefully created with no such carcinogen as it was accused of containing by the plaintiff. Simply put, there is no causational relationship between Drufo and cancer, and our witnesses have shown this to you. And lastly, Skylar Weirs, a loving sister to Dakota Weirs, who simply knows how to separate emotion from fact. Her extensive knowledge and research has led her to the conclusion that Drufo is a safe product to use, and that is all she stands for here tonight. She saw the misguided linkage between Drufo and non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, which is why she's testifying on behalf of the defense. Now, returning to this box, the plaintiff has essentially tried to place the blame on the company Lush Fertilizer for tossing the fragile contents of their own case all across the courtroom today. My client, Lush Fertilizer, put the warning label on the box, and it was left to the plaintiff to handle it with care. Through a preponderance of the evidence, by failing to meet the preponderance of evidence, I implore you, members of the jury, to return a verdict in favor of the defense. Thank you.
Any limited rebuttal?
Yes, Your Honor. Before I begin, may I have a brief time check?
Forty-two seconds.
Okay. Thank you, Your Honor. Members of the jury, the defense has tried to change your views on the clear-cut evidence that we have provided you here today, with speculation about Casey Rogers' credentials, Blake Doncourt's supposed environmentalism, and hypothetical ideas about broken boxes. It is true that had Drufo been handled with care, we wouldn't be here today. But not because Dakota didn't protect herself, but because of Lush's negligence in not taking proper safety precautions. The only careless ones in this case are Blake Doncourt and Lush Fertilizer, who cut corners in handling this product. So we once again ask you to return a verdict of justice for Dakota. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate everyone's hard work today. We're gonna, I guess there'll be some scoring going on, and eventually we'll turn this back over to the CBA representative.
Yes, I will let you know as soon as I have all of the scoring sheets. Wait, now one more. All right, we are good to go.
Excellent job. I'm going to invite the jury to share comments with the student competitors.
This is Jeff Bowen. I have no comments.
This is Miles Cabral, and I had, I don't know, about 20 pages worth of notes, so I'm going to try, I summarized them down to 3. I'm going to try to be really quick about this. In opening, I thought that it was great to have that cut corners, cut costs, cut the future, the description of the victim, with plaintiff. I thought that was really good, describing all of the witnesses and the opening on the other side. He handled with care. I thought that was excellent as well as describing what the witnesses are going to be testifying to. Then we had our first witness. There was a couple of objections. It was great to see that you guys knew your rules. I really liked the organization of the direct. You introduced the plaintiff as a victim, her work history, went into the causation, and then finally a sort of a cry for retribution. It matched up what perhaps a written motion would look like. I thought it was really good. The cross-examination sort of showed that there was not a connection between recommendations and instructions, that those are two different things. I think that was really effective. I also think that the talking objections were effective, as well as answering for a witness that doesn't answer, even though you were prevented from doing that any further. I've just seen how that works in a regular trial. I thought that was really done well. We go on to Carson Durst. The studies in science, the effects of that, the objections about the email. I thought all of that was handled really well. I really liked the last question effect on some of these. Here, the boom question came out with Carson Durst saying that the research was that Drufo caused Drufo, I apologize, caused the cancer here. Cross-examination, the biggest things about this was about that I thought was really good was the control of the witness. And again, the last question, the boom question was, hey, you were fired after 3 years of going to the next employer. Being fired, of course, takes away the credibility of a witness. There was something mentioned about the non-compete clause and how that's to all employees, not just this one. I thought that also was very good. Land court, when we go to the defense, I really liked the way that was developed up. The prestigious awards, careful and extensive research, the cross-examination, I thought that was very effective. You give 10% to charity, but it would have only cost you 2% to bake this and cause it to be saved. Also the next witness, the direct examination, that 10 times cancer, 5 times cancer, the voir dire that this was not a medical doctor. I thought that was effective. And then, of course, the final boom question here that this actually causes the cancer and it was caused by Drufo. Cross-examination, I think, took away the strength of that conclusion. Let's see, Schuyler, I thought that the direct examination was good. The voir dire was absolutely devastating. I think that was really incredibly done. The pseudoscience attack and the PR campaign, the mention that PR campaigns can actually harm the public. Also, just special note that there were some professional points here because the objection was not heard by the court and was brought up by the opposing counsel. I thought that was really, really well done, and it's good to see that professionalism. Let's see, with Williams, I thought that the direct and the voir dire was very effective. The cross-examination showing that there was a financial bias, the redirect showing that these studies in Europe were done incorrectly and had bad results. I thought that was really effective, especially with the timing of it. The closing lost so much, saving money over saving lives, cutting corners, all of that was very effective. I really liked as well on the other side, the imagination of the box, and the handling it with care. I thought that was done really well. All in all, it looks like both sides spent a lot of time in preparation of this. I was really impressed with the knowledge of the rules of evidence and the objections that were handled and how they were handled very well, and also your use of time. I'm all done. I hope I didn't take too much of your time. You guys did. It was very impressive to see.
I just want to join a lot of what Miles said. So my name is Joshua Nowak, and I'm a criminal defense attorney. So I think a lot of the feedback that Miles and I have overlaps from that sort of perspective. Um, in terms of what you guys brought to the emotional table, I thought there was a lot there. The key to being an effective trial attorney is always to be memorable. And, when the plaintiff opened, I was like, I heard the trilogy of cutting, and I just thought, oh my God, that's so effective. What an incredible trilogy. I don't know how the other side is going to top that. And then the defense didn't use a trilogy, but it sounded like a trilogy. It really had that emotional resonance of handle with care. So it really carried the weight of having that trilogy without doing the same thing. So really excellent work there. I want to just take a moment to talk about cross-examination, because I deducted fairly significant points for people who were interrupting, people saying, you've answered my question. That is not the way that it's handled in a courtroom. That is not the way it should be handled in mock trial. And I think that we can talk about a couple of techniques that you guys can use going forward in your competitions to sort of deal with tricky witnesses. And I don't know if Miles wants to chime in too for this, but you are going to have witnesses who are there to fight you. That is the entire goal of cross-examination, and that's what defense attorneys do. That's really your strength going forward. And when you have a witness who is droning on, you don't have permission from the jury to just say, okay, yes or no. Just provide me with a yes or no answer. That's on you to ask questions that are so leading and so fact specific that their only option is to answer yes or no. So I would encourage you to go back and hone your questions into sort of one fact questions, because when you start opening them up too broadly, that's when you give the witness sort of permission to start veering off to say what they want to say, because that's what they're trying to do. That's what they're supposed to do in mock trial, but if you narrow it down to, Dakota, you were working outside. You didn't wear the protective gear. It was hot outside. You didn't wear those things because of comfort. It leads the fact finder to the natural conclusion that you're trying to ask without giving them the ability to squeeze out. So I would encourage you all to go back and revise some of those questions. The other thing is, when you get a witness who is just rambling on, let them bury themselves. I deal with law enforcement on a daily basis, and they are always trying to squeeze in answers that are more favorable to the prosecution to squeeze out of what I'm trying to ask them. And sometimes what you need to do is just put down your pen, walk away from the podium, let them bury themselves. And then when they've talked for 5 minutes and they look absolutely insane, you come back and say, okay, are you done? If you continue to just feed into them, they're just going to keep wrangling. The reason I kind of went back and revised some of my points are, the judge here told you to let them finish. He gave you a specific instruction of let this witness finish, but nonetheless continued to interrupt and say, yes or no, or you've answered, don't go any further. I don't want that to detract. I think that you guys all did an outstanding job. I'm the regional coordinator for the Adams and Broomfield tournaments. I think you two are the best teams that I've seen across this entire case problem, probably the best teams that I've seen in the 3 years that I've organized the mock trial tournament. So I'm just trying to provide you some feedback on cross-examination, that I think will be helpful in excelling your practice. So I wish you guys the best. I hope you all go forward and truly outstanding work.
Thank you. And I echo those comments as well. My background in trial was as a public defender in West Virginia, and it's been almost 20 years since I've done a jury trial, but those things stay with you. The cross-examination is an art. There's no one right way to do it. There's lots of ways to do it correctly. There's also ways to do it incorrectly. To echo what Judge Novak was saying about interrupting or talking over the witness, in reality, the problem is that if you still have a court reporter, that's a human being sitting there typing every word that's being said, that person's going to fall out of their chair. And you're going to see body language from him or her showing that they're in duress or stress. And at the same time, you're making it hard for the jury to do their job, which is to listen and to judge people's credibility. Some of the objections, you could make an objection and you could lose the objection, and then what the witness shares could actually hurt them, and then that could be what fuels your cross-examination or your redirect. Sometimes it's better not to do a redirect because the last thing the witness said may have hurt them, and if you ask more questions, you're going to bury that. So there's a strategy that comes into, I've been in front of a jury before and I had more questions ready, but whatever that witness said just destroyed their credibility, and it's time to sit down and let that just cement into the minds of the jury. If I'm doing a bench trial, I'm going to do more objections because you're not going to offend a jury and you're not going to look scared to the jury. You're going to be preserving the record and keeping things right for appeal. Whereas in front of a jury, I'm going to make as few objections as possible, ask as few questions as possible, because I want the jury to remember as much of my questioning as possible. And if I ask a million questions, I'm going to be burying my own good points. You guys are all amazing. I just judged some moot court competitions for law schools this week through the Federal Bar Association. Some of your presentations were better than some of the law students' presentations. Different apples and oranges of what you're doing, but you guys have great skills. If you want to be lawyers, I'm sure you can all do that. My mock trial experience goes back to the early 90s in Maryland, and the skills and the practice and the rewards are all still the same. So I'm glad that there are lawyers who are willing to volunteer their time as coaches, as coordinators. I'm glad you guys have put the time and effort in. My cat also enjoyed your presentations, and hopefully you all will have a great spring as soon as it comes to Colorado.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you
Thank you,
so much.
everyone.
Thank you. To all our volunteers too.
Thank you, volunteers. You guys are awesome. Oh my God. That was awesome feedback. Thank you, guys.
Happy to.
All righty. If anyone's doing round two, we're doing orientation at noon. If you've sat through it before, 12:30-ish, and then we will get rocking and rolling.
Hope I can volunteer again next year. Thank you.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you. Hey, happy former public defender day yesterday. So.
Well, is that what it was? I don't
was
know. I
kidding.
mean, my dad got offended. He's like, why did I spend this money for a good college so you can be a public defender? And I'm like, well, you're not a lawyer, so I shouldn't really value what you say there. But politically, I figured I'm more of an underdog person. But if you win as a public defender, you win. If you win as a prosecutor, you're supposed to win 99% of your cases. So I just had more fun. But as a consequence, I'm really good at cross and I'm really not good at direct because I never built cases. I knocked holes in people's cases. But now I do mainly business immigration challenges. I sue U.S. Agencies in district court and federal court over delays or mistakes that the immigration system pushes out. So I'm still fixing mistakes and problems. I'm just doing it in the administrative agency process, not in criminal court. But if you're still doing criminal defense now in your career, God bless you, because that's a lot of negative stuff in your life that I don't have the filter for.
I just have to keep taking it one day at a time.
Okay. Wrap yourself in the flag and keep doing that.
Have a good one.
Take care, everybody.
Thank you.